Welcome to the DMZ, a place to practice good faith rhetoric, not just farm gotchas and dunks. We use structure to cultivate conversations where you have to stop and listen to the other person, even if it is just to find the flaws in what they are saying. Please check your weapons at the door, take notes, and attack the belief, not the believer. After each debate, there will be a free link to where you can go to vote on which side you believe made the most compelling case. So, sit back, relax, and cast those votes. This is the DMZ. Tonight's first debate of the night is going to be Lucy Hayes versus Energydahamter. Our prompt is: the removal of a profit motive would improve certain products or services. And on the clock first is going to be Lucy. So Lucy, you're going to have 3 minutes uninterrupted. Please go ahead and start us off. Give us your opening arguments. I'll start the clock when you start to talk.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm going to use.
You don't need to use the whole thing. Yep.
3 minutes.
Nope, that's fine. Use as much as you need. Go ahead.
All right. So basically, my argument is because there are different incentives in countries like Poland, where I come from, and the United States. For example, as I understand it, things like the prison system, things like the healthcare system have a profit motive attached to it, and my argument, I guess, would be that certain services should prioritize people's good, because we're not making the argument on the entirety of the profit motive. We're making the argument that certain services and goods would benefit from the lack of it. And I would make an argument that services and goods that should prioritize the good of people that profit from it, interesting word choice, would be better without the profit motive. That would be the prison system, that would be the healthcare system, that would be the public transport, education. Those are the things that would benefit from the lack of profit motive, the lack of incentivizing efficiency and cost over maximizing the quality of the service provided to the people, no matter how big the cost becomes. And I guess with that, I cede my time for now.
All right, good stuff. Well, now, Energy, you know the drill. 3 minutes is on the clock. Feel free to ask questions or rebut as you see fit. It's your time to control
Okay.
Energy, so go ahead and start it up when you're ready.
Okay. So, Lucy, my first question to you is, do you subscribe to any macroeconomic school of thought in particular? For example, the Keynesian, Austrian, Chicago school, etc. schools of thought?
No.
Okay. So then, are you familiar with like econometrics, economic philosophy, any sort of economics as a whole?
I am not formally trained in any school of economics.
I know, but have you read any books? Have you read any articles? Are you familiar with the basic concepts, the economic data, etc.?
Very basic concepts.
Okay, so what concepts of economics are you familiar with?
I am familiar with the basic models of economy, but I am not familiar with the particulars of any economic theory.
Okay, and I understand that, but I'm just basically asking if you are familiar with the concept of like supply and demand curves and
Yes, yes,
comparative advantage. Okay, um,
yes.
so Mike, are you familiar with the concept of the economic calculation problem?
I believe so.
Okay, so in your own words, could you explain what it is?
I'm not sure if I could explain it from, because I know some of these concepts in Polish. So if you could.
Okay, so the economic calculation problem is a criticism of economic planning for the allocation of the factors of production. So it's basically an advocation for the pricing mechanism, because basically the idea is that in capitalism, if you have a pricing mechanism, the subjective values of what consumers want will be signified to producers so they can allocate resources to produce those commodities and goods and services, given the information transmitted by the pricing mechanism. And without a pricing mechanism, then you get mismanagement of the allocation of resources.
All right.
Okay, so if you don't have a pricing mechanism, how do you not get the misallocation of resources?
Having a pricing mechanism does not entail a profit motive, though.
Well, the premise of a pricing mechanism is that you are incentivized to allocate resources in a certain way, so that way you can increase your profit because you can sell your goods to
No,
or
that's not
services
true.
to consumers.
That's not true for many services. That is not true for public transport, for example.
Okay.
You
So
you ask people to pay a price for a ticket, but the government subsidizes most of the cost of that ticket, which means that
okay.
people buying a ticket for a bus or a tram pay only a fraction of the total cost of the transportation, which means that the pricing mechanism does not actually function as a profit motive structure in this case.
All right.
Okay. So
Perfect.
I think
So,
it's not.
yep, we're out of time. I'm going to go ahead and put 3 minutes on the clock now for you, Energy. Go ahead and start it up. And just so you know, Lucy, like I said, after this, you're going to get the same chance to ask Energy questions, et cetera, et cetera. So uninterrupted, go ahead and start yourself off, Energy.
Right.
Okay. So I subscribe to the school of economic thought known as the Austrian School of Economics, which is a school of economic thought which emphasizes that the government should not intervene in the production of goods or services, and there should be a profit motive incentivizing the allocation of resources, because of the idea that if there's not a profit motive, then there's not information being signaled from consumers of goods and services to producers of goods and services. For example, in the Soviet Union, when they nationalized things like farm production, they couldn't allocate resources to people for where they should give basically the food that was being grown from the farms, because of the fact that it was owned by the government, and there was no profit incentive for the government to know where to allocate resources. And so, what, in my view, the pricing and profit motive does is gives information from the consumer to the producer so they can know where they can invest and allocate resources. For example, if I run a business and I notice my business is failing, then I'll look at the data that the marketing and data analysts will look at and see, well, consumers prefer these goods and services to other goods and services, so I'll allocate those resources to producing more of the goods and services that the consumers want, according to the market and data analysis. In my view, this is akin to the idea that scientific knowledge is fallible and constantly being revised, because of the fact that basically it's like you have a conjecture of what you should allocate resources to make, and that's akin to a scientific theory. And the way to test a scientific theory is not to dogmatically accept it. You test it against reality by seeing, hey, do consumers actually want to buy this good or service? And if they do, then you continue producing that good or service. And if you don't, you know, test it against reality, and you don't know whether you should continue to produce that good or service, because you have no way to know all the individual examples. The economist Milton Friedman used the example of a pencil. A pencil manufacturer knows how to make a pencil because they know basically where they can utilize the labor of some people who are good at manufacturing lead, or refining lead, and then cutting down wood and then turning it into a pencil, and they know that they should produce pencils because of the fact that consumers want pencils. But if you have an economy where you don't know whether consumers want pencils or not, you might either make too many pencils, which is excessive and a waste of resources, or you might not make enough pencils because you don't have the information from the pricing mechanism, and you don't have the profit incentive to know whether consumers want pencils or not. So you don't know if you should allocate resources to profit production, to pencil production, sorry. And the profit motive gives that incentivization for pencil production, and it allows for a division of labor where people who are skilled at making wood or cutting down wood will cut down wood. People who are skilled at refining lead will do that, etc. And so basically, in my view, the pricing mechanism, the profit incentive, gives people this reason to allocate resources more effectively.
All right. And now, after that, Lucy, 3 minutes is on the clock. This is your opportunity to question Energy about what you just said, what they just said, or to rebut as you see fit. I'll start the clock when you start to talk. You control the time.
So I guess I have a few responses to what was just being said. The one is that is kind of true when we were talking about companies, because companies incentivize profit and companies incentivize providing services and goods based on profit because they want to maximize the amount of revenue that gets in. But companies are not the only parties that offer services, and governments are bodies that offer those. And citizens of countries, cities, and neighborhoods are not customers. There are people that benefit from what the government has to offer to them. And so we have things like healthcare when the government creates medicine for people that are not in large amounts, for example, that need a certain type of medicine. They will research the medicine even though there will be no profit in it. The government will provide transportation to rural areas where not a huge amount of people will live, that will also not produce profit. The governments will subsidize, even at a loss, certain services for people that need it. And also there's the case of supply and demand are not necessarily linked to a profit motive. These are more things tied to trade overall. You do not need to maximize profit to give people what they need and charge money for it. Non-governmental organizations that start businesses are forbidden from having a profit from creating a profit, but they still are able to create a successful business via selling goods, learning what people need, providing that good, and then earning money for it. But there is no profit motive involved because profit is not something that is possible in that model. I am not arguing that profit motive is a negative in all situations. All I'm required to do in this conversation is to say that certain goods and certain services would benefit from the lack of a profit motive. And I would definitely make that case for medicine, for that inflicts people in very rare cases. Development of such medicine will not generate profit, and certainly distribution of such medicine will not generate profit. And yet that is something that is necessary for the people involved, and that is something that the government should do, and it would be a benefit even though the profit motive would be taken away from the equation. And I would make the case as such for the prison system, which, as I understand it, is profit motive in the United States, and things like transportation, because sometimes there are just not enough people benefiting from those things to generate a profit, and yet people still need those things.
All right.
Right?
So, again, as I said before, it is not necessarily just a time for cross-examination. The debaters are absolutely allowed to use this time to rebut if they prefer, which is exactly what Lucy decided to do. With that said, 15 minutes is now on the clock for the open forum. Now it's just a conversation between the two of you. Please keep it above the belt. Stay reasonable and go ahead and get back into it, y'all.
Yeah. So my first question to you, Lucy, is what's your perspective on the idea that scientific or generally speaking, knowledge we gain from like generalizations from experience are fallible? Do you agree with that idea?
Can you repeat the question?
What's your perspective on the idea that generalizations from experience are fallible?
They are, yeah.
Okay, because so for example, you look at something like white swans, and for centuries people thought all swans are white. But then you have the philosopher Karl Popper noted that that conjecture was falsified when you had a black swan found discovered in Australia. So scientific theories should be, in principle, you can disprove them, you can falsify them, you can disprove them, because if you're wrong, you want to be able to show that you're wrong. Because if you can't show that you're wrong, then you become dogmatic. Do you agree with that?
That is correct, yeah.
So, in my view, the reason the pricing mechanism is superior to government is because the government can be very dogmatic at times, because the government does not have an incentive to respond to the needs or interests of individuals. It has a tendency to self-rationalize its bureaucratic tendencies. Because if you're a business and you make a bad decision, and consumers can boycott your goods or services because they don't like them. But if the government produces a good or service and the people don't want them, they can't tell the government not to do it unless they violently overthrow the government. So in my view, the market process is much more scientific because it recognizes that fallibility much better than the government.
The problem, of course, is that the market and the pricing structures are something that existed before the profit motive.
The premise is that the reason the business will change its course of action is because it has a profit incentive to do so.
Yeah, but it will also often jeopardize quality of the product for the
No,
sake of
because if
maximizing efficiency and and cost.
well, I don't agree with that because of the fact that if a product is bad, then naturally consumers will boycott that product and buy a new product which is better from another
Not when
competitor
there is a
business.
monopoly, when monopolies exist. The United States being a prime example, in many states have only a single internet provider that will often provide a very subpar service, and yet people cannot do anything about it because they have no alternative.
So, are you familiar with the distinction between a natural and artificial monopoly?
Well, I don't see the relevance to our discussion.
Well, but do you understand the difference that a monopoly can be artificial and propped up by the government versus it can be natural and occurred due to market processes? Do you understand that distinction?
I understand the distinction.
So what I would argue is that in the case of internet providers, due to the like regulations on many things related to internet production, like building internet infrastructure, that is why there's internet monopolies.
What caused those? What caused those regulations to be in place?
I'm not familiar with the specific justifications given.
Could it be that the companies have lobbied the governments to create favorable conditions for their monopolies to thrive?
Possibly.
And that would be part of the profit motive, wouldn't it be?
Not necessarily because, well, okay, it would be part of the profit motive, but not the profit motive as I understand it, because in my view, a profit motive applies to the profit motive of all business owners. And so when you're talking about the profit motive in a crony system where the government favors some businesses' profit motive over others, that's not truly
But
profit.
I'm not saying about that. I'm talking about companies using all means possible to maximize their profit, and one of those things is eliminating the competition. And they will do it
Yes,
by any means possible, which includes lobbying for profitable laws that will allow them to be a monopoly.
but either way, the point is the solution to that is not getting rid of the profit motive, but the solution to that is getting rid of the government regulations on the businesses.
But I'm not arguing for the elimination of the profit motive. The prompt is that certain services and goods would benefit from a lack of the profit motive, which means that I do not have to argue for the elimination of a profit motive across the board. I just have to say that certain things would benefit from that lack.
Okay, but what I'm arguing is that unless you can provide a specific example where the government is better at allocating resources, then you have not provided a specific example.
The problem is that it's not about effectively allocating resources. It's about because that is effectively allocating resources is not always the best thing. The best thing can be just maximizing the needs of the people that need that certain service or good. Like
Well,
as I
that's not.
said, there are diseases that only affect a small amount of people, and you will not get a profit, and you will never maximize the allocation of resources in order to create that medicine and provide it to them, and yet those people still need that medicine. So it's not always about maximizing the resource relocation when it comes to what is the best course of action.
Well, there's billions of dollars, like there's charities with billions of dollars. So I would say that if someone has one of these rare diseases where there couldn't be a profit incentive to take cure them, they should go to a charity because, in my view, if they can't be of profit, they can't be of value to anyone else, then by definition they're not valuable and they don't deserve resources allocated to them.
Well, that's just a fundamental philosophy disagreement. So it has nothing to do with the viability or inviability of the profit motive, because I do not believe that people need to be always useful um, or contribute something in order to deserve something.
So what
And
meta-ethical
that
stance do you
goes that kind of conversation goes beyond the purview of whether or not the profit motive should be attributed across the board or not.
Okay, so then what is your ethical stance? Like, what do you think is right? What do you think is ethical?
I feel like there are certain baseline things that we all deserve that we should,
Okay.
as people, as social animals, should be taking care of one another to maximize one another's well-being.
And what evidence do you have for this?
That's my personal belief. I don't need evidence for that.
Okay, and that which can be okay,
That's
and
a
that which
strange
okay,
ask.
okay.
You want me to prove that's what I believe?
No, what I'm saying is
You want
if
me
it's
to
just
provide
your
a
beliefs,
study
then it's
that,
not objectively true. It's not
well,
objectively true
I don't
because it's
really
just your
believe in
beliefs.
objective truth, so
Well,
that's,
if
I
you don't
guess that
believe in
would be
objective
another
truth,
that
so
would be another kind of
okay. So
fundamental
is
disagreement that we
okay.
have.
Is Einstein's special relativity an objective truth? Is Einstein's fields equations, are those, prove basically, as far as we can tell, like proven physics concepts, are those objective truth?
Mm.
Is 2 + 2 = 4 an objective truth?
It is, as far as we can observe it.
Okay, so then we do believe that there are things which are objectively true as far as we can observe them.
As far as we can observe them.
Exactly. So there is objective truth. And so you've made a claim without evidence that it's good for us to take care of other people, and a claim without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
Do you have evidence that it's not good for us to take care of each other?
I don't need evidence to prove a negative. You need evidence to
It's not a
support
negative,
positive.
it is a positive claim. We don't need to take care of each other. Do you think we should
Uh,
not take care of each other? Are you
We
making that
don't
claim?
need is a negative claim. It's a claim that does not ascend to the proposition that we should take care of each other.
It's not a negative claim.
It is a negative claim because it's saying I don't believe you.
What do you believe?
So my own ethical stance is something like divine
Mm.
command theory. I believe that what is good is what God wills
How do you know what God wills?
because it's revealed in the Hebrew Bible.
Mm, but the Hebrew Bible is primarily written as a tool for the survival of the Jewish diaspora.
I believe the Hebrew Bible was written by God and revealed to Moses on Mount Sinai. And the evidence that I would provide for that claim is the fact that the Jewish people have survived thousands of years throughout history in the face of anti-Semitic persecution, thus
Yes,
confirming
and
their.
the Torah was written as a tool for that survival.
Um, well, I believe the reason
My
they survived is
evidence
because
for
of divine
that,
providence.
is the Polish translation of the Torah written by the one of the more famous Jewish rabbis, in which he wrote a whole introduction laying this out.
Okay, but take it either way. Even if my meta-ethical, it doesn't matter what my meta-ethical belief is, you still have not justified your meta-ethical belief.
Mhm.
So,
So I
okay,
guess in this case we're at an impasse because there is no real Like there is no proving one's beliefs with empirical evidence.
Okay, so I would say we can still pragmatically argue that a country like America has the highest GDP, and it is relatively speaking, the freest market in general. So therefore, it has a,
That's
you know, I
maybe
think it
true,
has.
but it also does the highest GDP does not translate into the biggest well-being for most of its citizens, which I
Okay,
would
so
argue is the most important metric.
is the standard of living higher in America relative to most countries?
Depends for whom. After all, America also has the biggest incarceration rate per capita in the world, doesn't it? And the prison system in America has the profit motive.
Well, first of all, I don't necessarily support the profit motive for the prison system, because I think that in the context of the
So you
prison
do agree
system,
with the prompt then?
well, the prompt is that basically we should get rid of the profit incentive for industries that don't
No,
have them.
no, 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 no. The prompt is certain goods and services would benefit from the lack of a um, profit motive. You just said that you don't necessarily agree with the profit motive when it comes to the prison systems, which means that you agree with the prompt.
Um, well, the connotation of the prompt is the idea that we should generally decrease the amount of industries that have a profit incentive.
No. It just means that
Okay,
there are
well,
certain goods and services that would benefit from not having that. It does not mean that we should decrease profit motive-based services across the board. It just means that there's certain cases in which would benefit from the lack of such a motive. And you just gave the example of the prison system, which means that you agree with the prompt.
so do you acknowledge that the same phrase can have multiple senses?
I mean, I do, but still it remains the fact that you kind of agreed with the prompt just now.
In one sense of the prompt, if you take it literally at face value, yes, but not in the
I
more
do take it
connotative
literally
sense.
at face value, yeah.
Okay, well, then I guess we're also at an impasse. So then my third question is, given the fact that you admit yourself you're not very knowledgeable about economics, why are you arguing against someone who has read books related about economics and philosophy of economics, who probably knows more than you, that you're so confident in your beliefs?
Because I know examples of goods and services that would benefit from the lack of a profit motive, and you agree with it.
How do you
As a
okay,
person
but
that has,
how do you come to know that? Do you come to know that from speculation, or do you come to look at it from looking at the economic evidence and logical, like, understanding of the economic system?
I, I guess I come to that conclusion by comparing different prison systems across the world, ones that have a profit system as well as those that do not have the profit system, and looking at outcomes of those systems.
Okay, so how about healthcare? So America has the highest research and development for pharmaceutical drugs
Mm.
per capita.
Mhm.
Do you want to source for that claim?
No, but what does
Okay.
that have to do with anything?
So you were claiming that healthcare, we should get rid of the profit incentive in healthcare, despite the fact that in America, where there is a profit incentive for healthcare, they're
That's
the
true.
highest level of research and development for new pharmaceuticals.
Okay. Now provide me with the data of how many American citizens benefit from that research.
Um, well, okay. I don't know how many American citizens benefit from it. I imagine some, but either way, foreign citizens
Some.
might benefit from it
So
as
that's
well.
basically proves my point, doesn't it? Because what does it matter if the America has the biggest research on certain healthcare if most American citizens will not benefit from the research? Because of the profit motive, because most Americans will not be able to afford the healthcare to benefit from that research.
Well, the time's up anyway, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, yes, it is. All right. So, first things first. We're gonna go to our Q&A section. So great job I'm enjoying the hell out of this, although I am in physical pain over here. So we're going to go with 3 questions to you first, Lucy. Then we're going to go 3 questions to Energy. Then we're going to look over and see if the audience or chat has offered any questions for themselves. I'm going to go first just because I can, and I know that you've already answered this, Lucy, so forgive me for asking you to repeat yourself. But just to clarify, it seems like you have made it clear that you do not believe that all industries would benefit from the removal of the profit motive. For the audience, just for the purposes of steel manning that position a little bit, would you name, please, a couple of options or a couple of services or products that you think actually do still benefit from a profit motive? That's, again, to you first, Lucy.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. And just so you know, I'm putting a minute on the clock for you, but it's not like if you keep going after that, I'm going to let you finish your thought. Can you name a few industries, products, services, etc., where a profit motive is still beneficial?
Actually, I'm not a super big fan of the profit motive, but I guess you could say that the profit motive could be useful in things like entertainment.
Okay. All right.
Although it also leads to, I mean, it depends on how you implement these things. It's never just as simple as profit motive equals good, because when unchecked, it can lead to certain predatory practices like the infamous microtransactions in games or stuff like that. So it all depends on implementation in my mind.
All right. Fair answer. Now, Myta, do you have a question ready for Lucy, please?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
So, my question would be, do you think that profit motives are required in some sectors of the government to be able to generate enough value to allocate those resources to the government subsidized sectors that you believe should have a more ethical approach to how they provide the goods or services to the constituents?
Did you catch
So
all
are
that?
you asking if
Yeah.
are you asking if the government should provide should create a profit motive for certain things to subsidize the other things that should not have a profit motive?
Well, I'm asking if you believe it's required.
No.
Okay.
All right. Easy enough. And Lutch, Indian Jesus, do you have a question ready for Lucy as well?
Yeah, just as a small question, maybe a bigger answer. I heard a lot of the idea of what you call it with healthcare specifically. I'm curious, and it seems like you presented a good argument that there are places in healthcare that would not necessarily improve with the profit motive. But and I apologize if I missed it. Can you give me a specific example of a product or service within healthcare that would be improved without the profit motive?
Well, I gave the very classic example of a cure or a treatment for a ailment that does not affect a huge amount of people, therefore creating this procedure and delivering this procedure would not generate a profit because there's not enough people that would buy into it, quote unquote.
Word up.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Good stuff. Now, questions for Energy. Got a lot of them. Which one do I choose from? Okay. So, and you actually did sort of say something to this, and I want to circle back to it, not to hold you down on it, but because I would like to hear you articulate it a little bit better. Energy, tell me about how the profit motives benefit the prison system specifically. So, how
I do not believe it does.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I do not believe the profit motive benefits the prison system, and I do not believe there should be private prisons.
Okay. Oh, all right. Okay.
I misunderstood the prompt. I thought this was about decreasing profit motive in general. So then maybe I misunderstood the prompt.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Well, that's all right. Myta, go ahead and hit Energy with a question.
Yeah. So if we rely on profiteering to determine the necessary consumer interest of a product or service, Wouldn't this destroy or disenfranchise millions or potentially billions of people from niche sectors which are required but do not generate profits to keep a society running?
Can you give an example?
Healthcare.
In healthcare, if there is a disease that affects a significant portion of the population, there will certainly be a profit that will could be gained from the investing in research and development for it.
Okay. And Lutch, question for energy, please.
Okay. Yeah, I just was curious. I should have asked this to both of you, but a definition of profit motive.
Okay, so in my
I
view,
think
the definition of profit motive that I use would be something like the ability to earn more than you put in, invest in something in the context of a private business, basically earning more than invest to create a good or service. So I create a good or service for $100, and then I earn $120 for that good or service that I create. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
that's good.
So then, we're going to go ahead and go back to our first debater here, since it looks like we don't have any questions on this debate coming in from the chat. I'm going to kick this back over to you now, Lucy. So you're going to get 3 minutes on the clock here for you to be able to spend as you see fit, uninterrupted, closing thoughts, closing arguments. I'll start the clock whenever you start to talk.
All right. So I guess I would say that um, I would start by saying that answering the thing like by saying it's written any you can just type in profit motive, the fundamental drive for individuals and businesses to maximize financial gain. It is the core principle of capitalist economies, incentivizing innovation, efficiency, and risk taking by rewarding organizations of producing goods and services that people value, which has its ups and downs. And I would say that the profit motive means that if it is deemed that a service and good will not bring in more revenue than needs to be expended in order to do that thing, then that thing will not be done, which means that, for example, in the case of transportation, there are certain rural areas where you do not have a huge amount of people living that would not have that public transportation just because not enough profit would be made, that certain medication would not be developed because certain profit would not be made. And when it comes to the prison system, it would mean that certain quotas of arrested people have to be met in order to rake in the profit. And I feel like that is not the best motivator for providing certain goods and services. I feel like there are certain goods and services that benefit from looking at the problem not from the perspective of how much additional revenue can be brought from that thing, but how can we, in the best way, provide that service or good to the people that need it without necessarily thinking of whether or not it will bring in revenue or not.
All right. Sort of sounds like you're landing it there, so we'll go ahead and close it off. Energy, 3 minutes is on the clock now for you, uninterrupted. Please give us your closing arguments.
So, in my view, the benefit of capitalism relative to other economic systems, for example, fascism, socialism, communism, etc., is that capitalism allows individuals to vote with their dollar. In a socialist, fascist, or communist economy, the government either the government or other people control the means of production in such a way that you can't falsify their economic decisions. In capitalism, you can. If a business makes a bad decision, for example, they make a low quality product, you can always vote with your dollar to boycott them. In a socialist, communist, or fascist country economy, you can't. What the profit incentive under capitalism does, in my view, is gives reason for businesses to invest in the more effective ways to allocate resources in the context of the areas where there can't be a significant profit incentive to invest, like in a rural area or in a very niche disease, then I would say those people should turn to private charities, and they are not significant enough of a population size that the government ought to allocate resources towards them, because by definition, if they aren't able to create a profit incentive for others, then they're not valuable to others, and therefore they cannot be of enough economic value to justify allocating resources to them. My opponent claimed she does not have a specific ethical justification for her beliefs, and that's fine. But if she's going to argue from the ethical side that we ought to take care of each other, in my view, she should back that up with some sort of argumentation or evidence. I could argue for my metaphysical position, I believe, but I don't have the time to now. So I'll just say this. On a pragmatic level, we all agree that we should have a system which benefits more people's well-being, right? So if that's the case, I believe it's obvious that capitalism has increased people's well-being relative to socialism and communism, because under capitalism in countries like America and Europe, the poverty rate and standards of living are, standards of living are much higher, and the poverty rate is much lower relative to other socialist and communist countries. For example, Russia during the Soviet Union, or fascist economies like Mussolini's Italy or Hitler's Germany, or modern day communist countries like Cuba or China. I believe that capitalism also can be seen empirically, not just through these examples. For example, to allocate resources more effectively, like the fact that America, with its for-profit healthcare system, has the highest level of research and development, and I have a source for that if anyone wants. And so with that, I'll say, if you oppose capitalism, then you are opposing the system that increases people's well-being. So while you might not be malicious about it, you are fighting against your own best interests, because capitalism is good for basically everyone. The only people who aren't going to benefit from capitalism are the people who can't be productive, but they can always send charities. And typically those people are interned at gulags or concentration camps under socialist or fascist regimes anyways. And with that, the time's over.
All right.
Is it okay if I interject something? Or
Not yet, but I'll tell you what. Here's the thing, Lucy. So we're gonna be going to the judges. You will get the chance to put a couple of words in there after the judges have rendered their judgment and such, and the audience has also voted. But primarily, the after party is where we're all going to have a lot to say about that conversation. I know that you're on the other side of the world, so if you need to go sooner than that, I completely understand. But I do want to say, beyond anything else, thank you very, very much for your performance tonight. That was absolutely wonderful, and we definitely hope that you are going to keep showing up for us. So again, jot it down, and we will come back to it. But somebody else is probably going to say what you're going to say before you get the chance. Let's hear what the judges have to say first. So with that said, I'm going to drop the link here in the chat for everybody. Boom! That is where we go to vote. So if you can see that link, go ahead and click that link. Give us a vote for who you thought made the most persuasive case. Do you believe that it was Lucy Hayes on the affirmative, or do you believe that it was Energydahamter on the negative? Again, we are not looking for you to vote who you like the most or who you agree with, but who you think made the most persuasive case tonight. So without further ado, we're going to go straight over to our judges. I'm going to go to you first, Myta. Myta, I assume you are ready to give us your judgment on a 10-point scale, my friend.
Yes, sir. So I guess I'm going to start off with the affirmative side, my overview of it. There was a good sort of line of argumentation talking about government subsidies, promoting certain things that the government deems to be important, how they allocate those. There was during the midpoint of your argument, you made a strong prompt claim. I thought that was really good. It seems to have largely went unrebutted. You used the double down on the previous ethics claim that you had established. You called out the religious ethics claims with the Torah, how that book has an overlap with other like religious texts. That was good. Calling out the idea of cost of living not being translated to quality of life as a result of GDP was another good one. And there was partial concession of the prompt on behalf of the opposition. The only negative argument that I really had against you was that there was a seemingly broken clock fallacy at some point in there where you just got morally lucky and happened to arrive at the correct position without having the knowledge to be able to back it up in the argumentation that he was providing, which I gave you a negative point, but you're still up on that regard. As for the negative side, talking about the Austrian model was something that I thought was very strong. Making appeals to the literature that you've read and have established were largely done, I would argue, poorly for the most part, as a result of the fact it just seemed like an appeal to authority and not engaging with the argumentation that was being provided, even if it was more simplistic in nature by the oppositional side. You brought up things like crony systems being susceptible under the free market, which was something that isn't necessarily fixed in the opposition's argument. I gave you positives for that. However, when you brought up private charity being an alternative to a government subsidization system, it seems that this is just an alternative that is being created for a lack of availability in your system, which I thought is something that was problematic. There was a slight prompt concession towards the end and an appeal to authority, which continued to come up throughout the debate, which I don't think is an intrinsically bad thing. But I think that you had some good rebuttals as to the claims of quality of living in the United States compared to lower GDP countries. And with that, I will move on to my final score. I give it 7-3 to Lucy.
7-3 to Lucy on the affirmative. All right, very cool. Go ahead and give us your judgment, Mr. Lutch. I assume you are ready as well.
Yes, sir. Well, Myta, you said all of the things. I agree with basically everything that Myta said. I do think that structurally both sides made maybe mistakes is even a strong way to put it, but in terms of like setting up the frame, giving what's the word, definitions, and as Mina said, throughout the debate, then appeals to authority, and really bringing, trying to, I respect it, trying to bring it into the objective morality debate, but I think that was a signal to at least me that this guy's reaching. And I'm definitely against communism and for capitalism, but I think maybe you got prompt cucked here, thinking that the prompt itself would be a little bit more specific to what you were saying. And at the end of the day, I don't really see how we can go any other way than giving Lucy the win because you conceded. So I was looking hard to try to give a point somewhere. And I think in general, you did a really good job, but with multiple concessions, I got to go 10-0 for Lucy.
Wow. All right, 10-0 for the affirmative. So audience chat, guys, it's already been decided, but I still want to see where you guys landed on this. Please give that link a click. You see it in the chat, no matter which chat you're in. Just, it costs you nothing. Click it, but only click it once. Otherwise, you're playing with it. And we'll see where you guys landed. That said, we're still waiting on the answers, but Lucy, if you wanted to, maybe what you said is still relevant, so I would definitely love to hear your thoughts. All right, go ahead.
Yes, because maybe we will have a debate in the future about.
Oh, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it in the after party. I promise. So go ahead and we'll write it down, and we'll come back to it in the afters. What you got?
Okay. Should I?
Yes. Let me hear it. Like I said, I'll bring it back up and respond in the after. Yeah.
Capitalism has made life better for some, but it is also, that is something that I am aware of, that scholars of capitalism also recognize that capitalism has been built on the misery of many people around the world in order to build it up. So it has made certainly life better for some, but it has also made life a lot worse for others. Also, fascism is not really an economic model, so to speak. And a lot of fascistic countries actually operated under capitalism. So I'm not sure if that's comparing capitalism versus fascism. I'm not sure, for a person that is read on the subject, the best way.
Yep. And I was about to say, sure, I'll let you. Yep, you can go ahead and give your response. Go, let me hear it.
Okay.
Chatters, go ahead and make sure you click that link and give us the vote. Go ahead. Sorry, Energy.
I think this is actually, I actually believe this. I actually think I objectively won this debate because of the fact that I think I actually came with better arguments. But if you guys don't think I argued well, fine. What I'll say is this: fascism is inherently anti-capitalist because of the fact that fascism believes that the means of production should be organized to serve the interest of the nation and/or state of a nation, and so inherently, because capitalism is the idea that the means of production should be incentivized for the profit motive of free enterprise in a laissez-faire system, fascism and capitalism are inherently incompatible. I'll also add that you did I did concede part of the prompt, but that was more of a confusion because I thought the prompt was more about reduction of the profit incentive in general, not merely the idea that some goods or services should not have a profit incentive. In which case, yeah, I'm not an anarcho-capitalist, but I think that's taking the prompt too literally. And with that, I guess no pain, no gain, right?
Cheers.
So I lost, but
Yeah.
all in good fun.
No, that's all right. All right. So, Lucy, yeah, we're still going to go and see what the audience had to say, but one way or the other, you've already won for the night, and you did so handily so far. 7-3 and a 10-0 is we have words for that, but I don't want to hurt Energy's feelings. So all I'm going to say is you did a great job, and like I said earlier, I hope that you keep showing up, and I hope you keep playing. We really dig your energy, and we really dig what you brought to the table tonight. So that said, let's go ahead and look into our results. We're going to lock it in 3, 2, 1. The audience has spoken, and fuck me, 10-0, 100% unanimous voting from the audience for Lucy Hayes, 16-0. So you got You got 2 10-0s. I've never fucking seen that in all of the time we've been doing this. Yeah, there's never been a shutout quite like this. So. All right, on the affirmative, Lethe Water Kai, and on the negative, Gorps Inc. Vigilante violence is immoral. Again, both of y'all are old hands at this. You know exactly how this works. I'm going to kick this straight over to you, Lethe. We're going to get right into it without any more waste. Start it up when you start to talk.
Alrighty, so as anybody that has experienced GORPS, we now understand GORPS is usually wrong, almost always. GORPS is going to try to convince all of us that terms and circumstances aren't what they are. GORPS will try to convince us that stopping a crime in progress is a form of vigilantism. They're going to try to convince us that some people don't deserve due process. GORPS will try to convince all of us that he didn't unalive the Easter Bunny in cold blood with prejudice unceremoniously. Don't fall for any of this. The failures of the system causing people to undertake immoral actions in circumventing the due process of their fellow citizens is morally abhorrent. Due process is foundational to a free society. The societal degradation caused by instances of ignoring due process are the makings of horror stories. No expectation that someone you pass in your day could accuse you of a crime and become judge, jury, and in worst case, executioner. Keep in mind the lynching of Emmett Till, the rise of the KKK, George Zimmerman stalking Trayvon Martin, and even the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. Let's be clear on these definitions. A vigilante is a person who takes the law into their own hands. They attempt to prevent crime, track down offenders, or punish wrongdoers without possessing any official legal authority to do so. Vigilantism is the act of ordinary citizens taking the law into their own hands to prevent, instigate, or punish perceived crimes without any official legal authority. It bypasses the formal justice system and usually involves the use of threat of force, frequently driven by a belief that official authorities are failing. Even in media, the characters that represent these ideas are a cautionary tale, not something to aspire toward morally. Marvel's Punisher co-creator, the late Jerry Conway, consistently viewed vigilante justice as a tragedy and a failure of the justice system. He explicitly rejected the appropriation of the Punisher skull by police and military figures, arguing that Frank Castle is fundamentally an outlaw and a criminal rather than a hero to be emulated. Then, moving on to characters like Rorschach, Alan Moore said, "Rorschach became the most popular character in Watchmen. I meant him to be a bad example. But I have people come up to me in the street saying, 'I am Rorschach. That is my story.' I'll be thinking, yeah, great. Can you just keep away from me and never come anywhere near me again for as long as I live?" This is exactly what we're looking at when we're looking at vigilante justice, or violence specifically. And with that, I yield my time.
All right. Gorps, 3 minutes is on the clock for you to use as you see fit. You can use this time to cross-examine or to rebut. We'll start the clock when you start to talk.
Lethe, do you think people should have a right to self-defense?
Yes, self-defense is not vigilantism.
Do you think that people have... Okay, so that's vigilante violence.
Chat saying muted again.
I got it.
I would not agree with you based on the definitions I provided.
Yeah, except when we talk about the real definition of vigilante violence, what we're talking about is non-state actors, right, acting to enforce laws that they are not entitled to enforce. Right? The law against assault, vigilante justice, would be self-defense. Or defense of others.
There is a clear differentiation between vigilantism and self-defense claims. It's pretty clear. You can put it into
Or
any AI,
defense of others.
and it'll spit that out for you. So like George Zimmerman would be a prime example of a vigilante, whereas I wouldn't say that the individual, well, no, I would even say the guy on the bus would be a clear example of a vigilante.
A prime example of a vigilante would be the guardian angels on the New York City subway station, who intervened regularly, right, when there was rampant crime, rampant robberies and assaults, and NYPD was doing nothing to step in. Would you agree that that is vigilantism?
That is absolutely vigilantism.
And do you think it's immoral for them to have stepped in to stop people who were being assaulted?
Yes.
That is immoral. Why is that immoral? But you agreed that if I were to step in, if somebody was violently attacking my wife, that would be moral.
Right.
Why? What's the difference between these two scenarios?
So your wife is an extension of you, which I would say makes it a self-defense issue in itself. You're protecting your homestead, your possessions, your own things. You're not out there looking for something to prevent or something to stop.
I own my wife? You're making it sound like I own my wife. That's a little fucked up.
I said an extension of you.
It's a little fucked up.
You and your wife become one. You don't own her.
It's a little fucked up to act like I own my wife. What about my kid?
Yeah, you don't own your kid. You're the steward over your kid, and you need to defend your kid.
Okay, what about my best friend? Can I defend my best friend?
Depends on what your best friend did.
If my best friend did nothing, assaulted, walking down the street, can I defend my best friend?
You can try to defend them, yeah.
Would that be moral?
Yes.
Okay, so why is the guardian angels on New York City subways different?
Because they're out there doing the job of what the authorities should be doing. So I would say their energy would be better put toward getting law enforcement to actually do their job, which is what they're put there to do.
That's not a statement as to whether what they're doing is moral or not.
Yes, I'm saying it's immoral. They have no reason, well, they have no jurisdiction to be out there physically assaulting people if they feel they're doing a crime. That's removal of due process, which I immediately feel is immoral.
All right. Is it moral? It's moral for the cops to step in without due process, but not for people?
Cops should get due process.
No, not when they're stepping in to stop a violent crime.
Usually they arrest the individual.
That's not due process. Do you know what due process is?
Yes, it's when they get to go to court after getting arrested by the cops.
Yeah. But the actual intervening is not due process in either scenario, whether it's the cops or a non-state actor. Our time is up, so
Yep,
I'm gonna.
I was going to let y'all finish there, but yeah, thank you very much. All right, Gorps, 3 minutes is on the clock for your opening. Go ahead and get it kicked off.
All right. I reject the claim that vigilante violence is inherently immoral, not because I think violence is good or because I want a world without law, but because morality is not determined by who uses force. It is determined by why force is used and whether legitimate institutions are doing their job. Vigilantism doesn't appear in stable, functioning societies. It appears when the state fails, when police refuse to respond, when courts won't prosecute, when corruption or incompetence leaves people defenseless, and when the social contract breaks down. People don't magically lose the moral right to protect themselves or their community. They reclaim it. If someone is being attacked and the state is absent, is it immoral for a bystander to intervene with force? If a community is terrorized by gangs while law enforcement looks the other way, is it immoral for residents to organize and defend themselves? If a corrupt regime refuses to stop violence against its own citizens, is it immoral for those citizens to resist? The affirmative wants you to say yes. I'm saying that's not just wrong, it's morally backwards. Morality requires context. We already accept this principle everywhere else. Self-defense is moral. Defense of others is moral. Even state-sanctioned violence, police, military, any other security, is considered moral when it's necessary and proportional. So why would the exact same act suddenly become immoral the moment a person doing it is not wearing a government uniform? The affirmative position only works if you assume a perfect state, perfect policing, perfect courts, perfect response times, perfect justice, which we all know our system does not have. Um, we live in a world where sometimes the only moral option is to act when nobody else will. To claim that all vigilante violence is immoral is to claim that people have a moral duty to remain passive in the face of injustice, danger, or state abandonment. And that's the real problem with this conclusion. It treats morality as a rigid, context-blind rule. But morality isn't a slogan, it's a framework for evaluating human action. Vigilante violence can be immoral, absolutely, but it can also be necessary, proportional, and morally justified when institutions fail. So the question isn't whether vigilantism is always good, it's whether it's always immoral. And the answer is clearly no, because when the state abdicates its responsibilities, moral authority doesn't disappear, it shifts. And sometimes the most moral act is the one the state refuses to take. And I cede the rest of my time.
Hey, back onto the 3 minutes for you now, Lethe. Cross-examine or rebut as you see fit. I'll start the clock when you start to talk.
Okay, Corpse. Do you agree that in order for something to be a vigilante form of justice, that you would have to be seeking this thing out preemptively?
No, that's not in really any definition of vigilante justice or vigilante violence. I actually I don't know if the stream was up when I was doing this, so I'll restate my definition of vigilante justice, which is a non-state actor taking matters into their own hands, whether in this situation violently, to enforce laws that they are not given the legal authority to enforce.
And so, are you fine with the idea that if somebody thinks you are doing a crime, that they take matters into their own hands and physically harm you?
Their response should be proportional to whatever they think that I am actively committing, right? So if they think I'm stealing something, they shouldn't be pulling out a gun and shooting me. But I think they do have a moral justification to step in and take that item and give it back to its owner that they think it was stolen from.
So they have the right to illegally detain you because they suspect you of a crime?
It is legal. Citizens' arrests are legal, and they are moral.
So you're fine with this, and you think this is a good thing for society?
I think it is a good thing when the institutions that society has are failing.
Well, yes, that's
As
already
exactly as I
implied.
said in my opening. When the
So,
institutions are failing, we need something as a society to enforce laws and social norms. That is where vigilante justice can step in.
so in the case that, of course, I'm going to say it's a moral decay that the justice system and the authorities aren't doing their job, is going a step further and having society itself do that the best moral action going forward?
The best moral action would be for the state to do something, but at the end of the day, the state is not doing something, and so vigilante violence can become necessary, and at that point, it becomes moral.
So in the case that individuals end up even killing someone in this process, what should be done about them?
As with the killing of anybody, there should be a court and prosecution. I did not say that all vigilante violence is moral. I said that vigilante violence itself is not inherently immoral.
So basically what I'm saying here is the immorality of the police is going to create an immoral framework along the populace, because you can't expect people that aren't trained in law enforcement to follow the proper steps in law enforcement. There's going to be many missteps. And do you want this to be a societal norm?
I think that it should be a societal norm that when we see people, when we're walking down the street and we see somebody being assaulted, that we step in and we stop that. I think that yes, should absolutely be a societal norm.
All right, so we're done with the cross-examination rebuttal. It's 15 minutes on the clock for open forum. Y'all just go ahead and keep on at it.
All right, Kai, you were focusing on the little citizens arrest portion, and I want to dig into that one with you. Do you think that all crimes are immoral?
No.
Okay, so when we're talking about vigilante violence or vigilante justice, even if, let's say, a citizen's arrest was criminal, could it still be moral?
No, I don't think it would be, because you don't understand the situation of the individual that you think may or may not be committing a crime. This brings to mind little Tasha, the thing that pretty much started off the riots in LA.
No, let's bring to
When
mind a goddamn school shooter. Do you think it would be immoral for somebody to force down and citizens arrest a school shooter
that would be technically self-defense and defense of others. I think that would
if
be a
they
good
weren't
thing to do.
shooting at you? Well, all of this is in defense
They
of others.
eventually want to shoot you. If they get you in their sights, they're a school
Maybe
shooter.
you're their
They're
friend.
not
Maybe they
being,
don't want to shoot
they're not
you.
being discriminate. Oh, I don't even know how you get there.
Hey, you seem like somebody who would be friends with a school shooter, but that's a separate issue. At the end of the
I am
day,
friends with you, so here we are.
at the end of the day, most vigilante violence is in direct defense of others or of yourself, if we're including self-defense, which I would. But this is all defense of others. This is the inherent reason it is moral is because it's defense of others. Do you disagree with defending others?
I don't disagree with defending others. I disagree with people taking actions into their own hands without knowing the full context of a situation. So for them to do so, it can cause undue harm to many people within the populace. And this becomes something that is normal and status quo, then more people will begin doing it, and we will have a moral societal decay.
Allowing rampant crime, allowing rampant, specifically violent crime, also leads to societal and moral decay when the state is refusing to act on these things. Somebody needs to step in to do such a thing. Take actually a great example. Fucking Renee Good and Alex Preddy were both doing moral acts. The state killed them for it, which shows that the state is not stepping in for morality. But these were acts that, especially Alex Preddy, that were moral and in defense of others. And they were the correct thing to do. Would you do you think that Alex Preddy did the correct thing?
I don't think Alex Preddy did anything wrong. I don't think he was acting as a vigilante either. He was protesting, which is exactly what I would suggest
He was
people do in law
specifically
enforcement.
helping pick up a protester that was shoved to the ground, assaulted by
Right.
a federal agent. He was helping end the situation of assault, putting himself between this person and the assaulter being the federal agent. He was doing a moral act of vigilantism.
I don't agree that that was vigilantism.
Why not? He was stepping in on a situation without the proper legal authority to do so. And
Trying to
stopping
pick someone
an
up and getting
assault.
in the way of harm of someone without assaulting anybody is not looking to prevent a crime or anything else on that order. It's
looking to
literally
stop a
just
crime.
helping the person up.
It's
No, it
looking to
wasn't going to
stop a crime.
stop.
That's vigilantism.
I mean, literally, it escalated to more crime, just being real.
Yeah, that's because the federal
But
agent's
that's
fucking insane. But
definitely not vigilantism.
it is. It is. It very clearly is. I already gave my definition.
I mean, I said at the beginning of this that you were going to warp everything to mean something that you wanted to mean, and I already said what you were going to do it for. And I
Very
keep
clear.
trying to
A
clear this up.
non-state actor taking law enforcement into their own hands. This seems like a very clear definition, bro.
The attempt to prevent crime, track down offenders, or punish wrongdoers without possessing any official legal authority to do so. So this, I would say more clearly, like the best example I could give would be George Zimmerman. He was literally patrolling the neighborhood looking to prevent crimes. Same thing with Kyle Rittenhouse. He showed up to try to prevent things and took matters into his own hands. And look
I
at
don't
what
think
happened.
Kyle Rittenhouse showed up to prevent things. Let's be perfectly fucking honest here. But let's take a look back at the New York City subway systems, right? Where in the 80s and the 90s we had the guardian angels that were actively protecting people. They were patrolling these stations. They were actively stopping violent crimes from taking place. Their existence, their presence itself, was a deterrence to crime in a way that the state refused to do. Were they immoral?
Yes, I think so. I think the moral act would have been to protest the removal of the police chief or anybody that is allowing for law enforcement not to do their job.
And
That would have been the
that
correct
would just be
moral
removing the entire NYPD. But would it be moral to just sit by and let your neighbors and your community members get robbed, assaulted, sometimes murdered?
I'm
While
going
you
to say,
stood there holding up a sign that said, "I don't like the police chief." Is that truly the moral act for you to do?
I don't think they should go around beating people up, or like in the case, maybe a citizen's arrest is reasonable if somebody is committing a crime that can harm people, but to actually be looking to prevent crime is not the job of your everyday citizen. So they should not be taking this on their hands. They should be applying to the police force.
And what if the police force
Ult-
rejects them because the police force is corrupt? We're talking about vigilante violence coming to place when a system is corrupt, when a system is failing. That system is the problem, and while you work on fixing that system, something needs to happen to protect the community.
and what I'm
Unless you
saying
do think
is,
that we should just have assaults and violence running rampant within society because one system fails and we have no backup.
what you're
That
basically saying is two wrongs make a right in this instance, and I can't agree
no,
with
what
that.
I'm saying is we should protect people. We should defend our community members. And sometimes that means using a bit of violence to stop something like an assault from happening. Right? Realistically, in most instances, to stop this assault, you would need to use violence. You would need to step in and physically stop what is happening. That is the moral thing to do. Do you want your grandma getting beat up and nobody stepping in?
I mean, I wish someone would have stepped in for the Easter Bunny, but no one could hear him scream. I'm just saying
Yeah, because I
that
was smart about my crime. Come on.
I'm just saying that ultimately the police are going to be able to stop more crime, handle things, de-escalate, at least the way they're supposed to function, a lot better than your everyday citizen.
Oh,
And
no.
seeing these
I
actions,
100% agree with you, but vigilante violence comes when that system is not working, which you and I both know is not working in many areas of the United States, for example.
yeah, I'm saying it is a sign of moral decay, and the next step of vigilante violence is the next step in moral decay. We're going to continue eroding society by doing this.
The lack of a impetus to step in when your neighbors are being literally like attacked is a sign of moral decay in and of itself. The fact that you can't see this and like truly recognize this for what it is, which is a form of vigilante violence that is incredibly moral, is crazy. I'm
You
thinking you wouldn't
wanted
have
to be.
stepped in for the Easter Bunny either.
I would have definitely shouted from the rooftops, videotaped, and made sure you were brought to justice for your crimes against that poor bunny.
Right, but you could have stepped in and maybe that bunny would be alive today. Rather than
Well, you would
you
have had two
screaming
bodies,
from
and
the
that would have been
rooftops doing a
terrible.
video about it, we could have the Easter Bunny alive and me in jail, but instead you did neither, and I'm here debating you.
I think you more than likely would have got both of us, and I think stepping in puts people in danger they should not be in.
Well, I think people should be smart about how they step in. I think people should know how to defend themselves if they are in a situation where they are going to carry out vigilante justice. I think that is a very smart thing. I encourage people to not put themselves in situations that they don't know how to handle themselves in. This is a very simple concept. I'm not saying every single person should walk around doing
So,
vigilante justice, but for those that have the ability and that have the skill set to do so, I think they should. And I think that would be the moral thing for them to do when a system is failing the people.
do you think what Daniel Penny did was moral?
Which one is he?
He's the guy that choked out the homeless man on the bus
No, he went too
and killed
far.
him.
He went too far to the point where it wasn't like just vigilante justice, right? At the point in which he had subdued the guy, he should have chilled out and stopped. It wasn't the vigilante justice or vigilante violence that was the problem there. It was the fact that he wanted to choke the dude out and not stop.
I don't think that was the case. I think he felt that somebody near him's life was in danger and he was restraining this person, and he used too much force in restraining this individual. And what we got was a dead, innocent individual who had committed no crime up to that point.
Yeah, and I don't think people should step in for that. Again, like I've said before, vigilante violence is when people are stepping in when a crime is being committed, stepping in to stop these crimes, or having a presence that is a deterrence to crime. These are aspects of vigilante justice and vigilante violence for some of it that should be followed. What he did was not actually following that.
I think a lot of people aren't understanding like where this whole idea of vigilante comes from. If you look at the root of vigilante is vigilant. You are on watch for X or Y. You are actively trying to be involved in these situations. And any like even in media, you wouldn't call like Superman a vigilante. You would call him a
Superman
hero
is a
because he comes
vigilante.
in. No, I wouldn't say Superman is a vigilante.
He
I
is.
would say
Fine.
Batman is a
He
vigilante.
he
Punisher is a
flies around
vigilante.
the sky, stepping in on actions, some of which criminal, to protect the community. That is a vigilante. You just have a negative connotation because you're retarded.
Good retort. Good retort.
Yeah.
I wish you understood words properly and stopped twisting this around to be something that it's not. But all the same, you have to understand the difference between when people are trying to defend against a situation that they are in versus people that are actively looking to get involved in situations because of an expectation, which is why I mentioned Kyle Rittenhouse or George Zimmerman. Like, it's just the way it is.
Which is why I mentioned community patrols for ICE, right? At the end of the day, these patrols are not immoral. The stepping in when crimes are taking place is not immoral. It can be immoral if you choke somebody out for what, like 5 minutes or whatever the fuck, right? That action is immoral. The vigilante aspect of this was not the immoral aspect. It was the fact that some people go too far.
So what if he hadn't killed him on the subway? What if he just, permanently injured him? Does that make it better?
I mean, then take it to court. After that point, take it to court. In
Oh,
fact,
now we get due process.
what I actually think should have happened in that New York case is that somebody else should have stepped in to stop the person from continuing to strangle the guy.
So you're saying
actually
that we
would have
needed
been
more
the best
vigilantes.
outcome. The
We
best
needed
outcome
more.
of that situation, because at that point, the guy who murdered him was committing a crime, right, going far beyond anything else. At that point, somebody should have stepped in. And it was a perfect example of where the state cannot step in to help. The state is not going to respond fast enough to a moving subway to be able to step in. And the community is the only source that can stop that. And that is vigilante justice. Vigilante violence can be used to carry out the justice.
You're telling me there aren't police on subways?
No, I'm saying when it's actively moving, that train car had no police in it. There was no way for the police to respond faster than a community member could respond.
We don't know if there were any police on there because this dude decided to take actions into his own hands rather than looking for an authority.
There was no police on the subway car. We do know this.
I wish you could know this for a fact. Like, I would like some proof of that.
Because
just because one didn't show up doesn't mean there weren't any.
I mean, everything indicates that there was not one there.
Yeah,
and
I just
in fact, if the police officer was doing their job adequately, they would have stepped in there. And that is yet another example of a failure in the system where the people need to step in to take matters into their own hands effectively, right? Wouldn't that show that if there was a cop there, that there's a problem with the system that causes the community to need to protect themselves?
Yes, the rot of society does spread, and I'm saying we need to stop the spread of that and not try to elicit responses of this nature.
Right, stopping
what you're doing is spreading the rot. Like, basically, in that situation,
your grandma from being beaten in a subway station.
Yeah, that's my grandma. I'm going to step in and try to stop that, of course.
Would you want me to as well? Would you want me to step in and stop that?
Not necessarily.
Really? You don't think it would... Do you think it would be moral if I were to do so?
I think it would be good if you try to stop it, but to actually take actions into your own hands. But try to find some way of non-violently stopping the situation or calling attention to it so some level of authority can get involved, I think would be good.
And if the person does not stop beating your grandmother and no authority like a cop comes to help, what should my next move be?
You can get in the way of the situation because you weren't looking for this situation. You just happened to be there. So you weren't
just hanging out in the subway to see if any crimes happened. So what? That doesn't make a difference into what my response should be to this situation.
So why wouldn't you have some way, if this is what you're doing, why wouldn't you have like a hotline to some authority or let it be known that, hey, I'm on watch here?
It's called 911. I could call 911. Maybe they don't respond for 20 minutes. At that point, your grandma is getting beaten for 20 minutes. I think that the action, if they are not responding, right, and if non-violent methods are not working, would be to use force to stop that person from beating your grandmother. And that would be the moral thing to do.
So people taking physical actions is something you want to endorse in society.
I am saying that when the systems fail and nobody comes to protect the community, yes, sometimes physical action is needed to protect said community, and that would be the moral thing to do.
Usually in those cases, you have like neighborhood watch, things like that. They usually carry whistles. They're not going around beating people with sticks. We're not trying
I'm
to
not
create.
saying beat people with sticks. It's a use of force to pull somebody off, right? If I randomly grabbed you and pulled you backwards, for example, on the streets, that would be assault, right? This is a use of violence. So grabbing somebody and pulling them off of somebody else, say your grandmother, right? This is a use of violence. I would hope that any community watch would do the same exact thing.
Yeah, I don't have a big issue with that. Again, if you were looking for this to happen, I think that's not a good thing, and there's something wrong
If
with
I'm
the
hanging out
individual
in my park
that's
to
not
make sure,
looking.
if I'm hanging out in my neighborhood park or my neighborhood subway station, right, just to see if anything happens, and I'm just sitting on a bench and I see this shit go down, that does not change the calculus for what is moral in this situation in terms of what my response is. The response should be nonviolent action, and when that doesn't work, you get into physical action and you step in. The scenario in which I happened across this crime does not change what is moral for me to do in response to this crime.
What you're saying, for the most part, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll go ahead and finish your thought, and then we're going to go to our Q&A.
Okay, quick thought. It was that this individual is actively looking to get into a physical altercation, and that's the immoral portion of it. If you're just looking to bring awareness or make sure people don't get hurt and call out these things, perfectly fine. But if you're looking to get into physical altercations, that's where the immorality comes in.
All right. So, good stuff. So we're going to go ahead and go to our Q&A section. Great back and forth there, gentlemen. Enjoyed the hell out of it. Definitely exactly what I knew it was going to be. We do have at least one question in from the chat, but we're going to save that one for the after. And again, chatters, remember, you can always throw, don't worry. Yeah, your question comes last. Don't worry. But go ahead and throw any questions in the tip jar that you guys have out there in the audience, and we will put them at the end of the Q&A. So, Lethe, I actually had like several tiers of questions because I wanted to clarify, but I think that you did just clarify that you do not believe that an individual should interfere to defend a stranger. That's not the question. I just wanted to clarify that. Is that correct? That's what you're saying?
When you say interfere, like physically interact would
Yes.
be the very last thing anybody should be trying to do.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So you had said something about somebody being like a neighborhood watch and making sure to wear something that indicates to everybody around them what they are doing, letting everybody around them know that they are on watch. Does it change your calculus regarding vigilante violence and seeking out a situation to prevent a violent act if you are properly dressed or wearing a sign that says if you pick on somebody else, I will beat you up? Does that change, like, mean notifying people?
No, the problem is the beating up part. Like, to be out there whistling and like bring a call to, hey, there's something going on here, or a house is being broken into, you call the cops. That's what Neighborhood Watch does. They don't go around grabbing people and assessing like what crimes they did. The removal of due process is the primary immoral portion of it.
All right, cheers. Myta, a question for Lethe, please.
Yeah. So, just out of curiosity, would you say that the Underground Railroad and helping escaped slaves prior to and during the Civil War was an act of moral vigilantism, as going over the government and their immoral actions, or would you not consider that a form of vigilantism or immoral by nature?
I wouldn't consider it a form of vigilantism. I would consider it a crime being done to free people in this instance.
But a moral one?
I would consider it moral, yes.
A moral crime? Copy. All right. And now for you, Mr. the Indian Jesus, do you have a question ready for Lethe? There's too many long E's.
Yes, sir. So, we were talking about Batman and a Superman. Can you tell me why Batman is a vigilante but Superman is not?
Superman doesn't actively seek to go out and beat up crazy people for fun and profit. Whereas Batman goes out and literally breaks ankles and holds people off of the ledges of roofs purely for himself. So, and he's not even necessarily equipped to do so. And he brings in child soldiers while he's at it to further patrol and beat up crazy people. Whereas Superman is actively trying to help the communities, getting cats out of trees. He's stopping trains from derailing. He doesn't tend to stop street level crime or even get involved. He'll just stand there while people shoot at him. He's not going to beat the crap out of them.
Okay.
Can I follow up on that? Or no?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yes, Jesus.
So what going down to the semantics of it, what is it just because I don't know. I mean, I'm not, super into comics, so I don't know specifically, but I don't think it sounds accurate that Superman is not looking to help, because he'll be at the Daily Beast or whatever, and he'll hear that something's going on, and he's like, oh, I gotta go do whatever it is. So I'm not understanding definitionally why that is not vigilantism versus Batman. I understand that they operate differently.
So usually Superman will get involved in like bigger things. He'll stop a bank robbery when he's called upon, or he'll stop train derailments. He'll interfere in like things that even the cops couldn't really do anything about. Whereas he's not going out and beating up street criminals or getting involved in minor altercations. Superman doesn't show up if your house is getting broken into. Like, these just aren't things Superman does. Whereas Batman definitely goes out to put the hurt on people, just on general principle.
All right.
Okay.
Now for you, Gorps. So I'm going to lay out a scenario for you. I know that you are saying that you believe vigilante violence is a moral act. However, would you agree, and how do you account for different people having a different idea of what is and is not an intervenable crime? So the scenario I'm going to put out for you, I'm sure you have met at least one frat bro who wants to get into a fight and has interacted with a person of a minority ideology, whether that's a communist, LGBTQ person, or whatever, and feels that it is their moral duty to interfere with that person because that person is having a negative impact on society as they see it. Do you agree that in situations where we have the person, the average citizen, deciding what is and is not an acceptable thing for them to interfere with, that's going to lead to a overall net negative?
I don't think it's an overall net negative. As I said during the debate, I don't think that every form of vigilantism is moral. There are immoral things you can do within vigilantism. The things that I think are moral things, being like specifically stepping in on like violent crimes taking place, I think that is a net positive. If a bunch of people go around doing vigilantism by harassing minorities, that's first of all not really vigilantism. They're gonna do it with or without that justification. They're just fucking racists or whatever. But I do think that a bunch of people going around being racist and calling it vigilantism would be bad. I guess it doesn't fit into my moral framework of vigilantism.
Perfect. Myta, question for Gorps, please.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about vigilantism being done by people who do it properly, and in your own words, you called it smart. How do you determine without bias what is and is not smart vigilantism? And how would you apply this when so many people who commit vigilantism in the modern day are only motivated by bias?
I mean, I define it largely based upon proportionality, right? So the reaction needs to be proportional to whatever thing that they're interfering with. And then, sorry, can you restate the end of that question?
Yeah. So how would you apply this when so many people who commit vigilantism in the modern day are only motivated by bias?
I mean, it still applies the same way. It's kind of similar to my answer to Radish's question, which is that if they're doing vigilante justice, they're doing a proportional response to like serious crimes. Really, is what I would consider moral vigilantism. And even if they're biased, a proportional response would still like that standard would still hold, and there would be no problem. It's the people that are not doing that are just trying to be racist or transphobic or whatever the fuck, right? It's those people that whether you put vigilante on it or not, they would be doing that act. So in my mind, it doesn't really frame into vigilantism.
And Lutch, a question for Gorps, please. You are still muted, my friend.
Sorry about that. So Gorps, can you give me an example of vigilante violence that would be illegal but would be moral?
Illegal but moral would be there's a case out of California a couple years back where somebody's daughter was raped and the rapist got off scot-free for the crime, and he went and beat up the rapist.
Fair enough.
That
Okay.
was very illegal and he was punished for it, but it was moral, I think.
Fair enough.
All right. All right. So as I said, we do have a couple of questions from the chat. The first one, and this one I can't actually pop up because the person sent it to me directly. They're going to do a tip later, but the question is for Lethe. So Lethe, what is the distinction between self-defense and vigilante violence? Can you please outline that because there was some overlap in your definitions there, and I think some people were confused. What is the difference between self-defense and vigilantism?
So self-defense is defense of self or people in your general vicinity. You're not looking for this. So in the root of vigilante is the word vigilant or vigilant. It is something you were looking for. It is a proactive thing. So self-defense is usually not a proactive thing. You're not looking to have to defend yourself. You are looking, you're just there and something happened and you're reacting to it. Whereas vigilantism would be the case of you're out there looking for this specific thing and already know how you're going to address it.
Okay, good stuff. And now another question. This one is for you, Gorps. Chatter asks, what did you do to the Easter Bunny?
I'm going to invoke my right against self-incrimination here and plead the fifth.
Okay, so what did somebody else do to the Easter Bunny that you're being accused of?
Let's just say the Easter Bunny won't be back next Easter.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. We will have to get that question answered in the after party. So, good stuff. We are going to go ahead and go to our closing arguments. Great debate, gentlemen. We've all enjoyed it, but let's hear what you guys have to tie it off. Lethe, 3 minutes is going on the clock for you. Put a bow on it. Let us hear your closing arguments.
So primarily the idea that there's already a moral decay in the sense that the police aren't doing what they've been assigned to do. The most moral thing you could do would be to press on the police and the system itself to enforce the laws that they are there to do, rather than putting more people in harm's way and advocating that more people should be doing so, which is exactly what I ended up hearing in the debate that I was just in. So I would like to see people actually pushing for better policing, better reforms, all of these things, so that people can actually experience due process. The individual that Gorps mentioned that went and killed the rapist of his daughter, which is a terrible thing that happened, should have had due process and should have to sit in jail or face whatever ramifications that the system places upon them. But I don't want a world where, say, Christians feeling like LGBT individuals are a threat to society and taking matters into their own hands, because one person's form of vigilante justice is different from another's. These are not equal propositions. So unfortunately, you're going to see a vast array of justice when we have a pretty clear idea of what justice should be. And I don't think everybody's going to have that same idea or mentality. And we don't want to propagate that within society. It will create much more moral rot. And with that, I end my time.
All right. Cheers. And Gorps, your turn now, my friend. 3 minutes is on the clock. Put a cherry on top. We'll start it when you start to talk.
All right. The affirmative walked into this debate defending an absolutist claim that all vigilante violence is immoral. Not sometimes, not usually, always. And the moment you apply that standard to the real world or even stories we culturally use to understand morality, it collapses because by their logic, or by his logic, Superman is immoral. Superman is the textbook definition of a vigilante. He's a non state actor with no legal authority that uses force to stop crimes when the state can't or won't stop it. He acts based on his own judgment, not government orders. That is the definition of vigilantism. If the affirmative is consistent, they must say Superman is immoral for stopping a mugging, immoral for stopping a bank robbery, immoral for saving a child from a burning building if he breaks a door to do it. And they won't say that. If they won't say that, then they've conceded the resolution is false. This is the core problem with their position. It treats morality like an on or off switch, or rather than something that can be defined given the context. The context, intent, and proportionality of an action is what can determine its morality. If someone uses minimal force to stop an imminent harm, that is moral. If the state fails to protect people, that moral authority shifts back to the individuals rather than the state. If a community steps in because institutions won't, that's not chaos, it is the responsibility and the moral duty of that community. According to Mr. Lethe, Superman is immoral, the guardian angels were immoral, anyone who intervenes to stop harm when the state fails is immoral. That's not a moral framework, it is a refusal to engage with reality. My position is simple and consistent. Vigilante violence can be immoral, absolutely, but it is not inherently immoral. When it is used proportionally to stop imminent harm in the absence of state protection, it is not only moral, it is necessary. The absolutist position of Mr. Lethe forces them to condemn every heroic act that wasn't government approved. My position reflects how morality actually works in the real world and in the stories that we tell to understand right and wrong. If you believe Superman is immoral, vote for Mr. Lethe. If you think Superman is a hero and moral, your choice is clear. I see the rest of my time. I also have to say to the chat, my cat is innocent.
So it was not the cat that killed the Easter Bunny. Got it. All right.
No, it was not.
That was actually my suspicion, was that you were just taking the blame for the cat. All right, everybody. So we are going to go ahead and put the link in chat here. And I have sent it to those of you who are currently streaming over on YouTube as well. And I'm going to drop it into my own YouTube. And I'm going to drop it into my own Kick as well. And please, everybody, go ahead and click that link. I'm not sure that the judges are going to be as universal on this one. I don't know that this one's going to be unanimous. I could be wrong, but I have this strange suspicion there might be some daylight. So please chat, get those votes locked in as quickly as possible so that we don't have to twiddle our thumbs and talk in circles until you vote. So with that, judges, Myta, you're up first, my sir. Do you have a decision? Are you ready to render judgment?
Yep, I'm ready.
Let us
So I'll start out with the affirmative, as I always do.
Yep.
I think making the claim to the history of vigilantism and strong claims of social large-scale protests that came from injustice or were stemmed from vigilantism as a result of injustice. You made strong social justice claims. You talked about the claim of perceived crime involvement, not necessarily knowing all the information and how things are going to play out before someone gets involved. Good, strong arguments there. More strong social justice claims I have written down. Appealing to unequal self-defense and undoing harm in the perception or the name of good was another strong line of argumentation. The only negative I have here for you is trying to predict the oppositional argument before it was actually made. You had strong appeals to improper vigilantism and appeals to function in structured systems where vigilantism isn't needed but still happens. As for the negative, strong claims of vigilantism for the structural failures. Your example that you used was the NYPD. That was great. Inherently immoral, not just immoral, which is a strong rhetorical tactic, making an expansion of the original prompt. You also use strong social justice claims to the opposition's, I guess, what you would call discontent. There were good rebuttals about citizens' arrests and failing institutions as a result of that. There were also strong claims of criminality doesn't mean immorality. I think that was another good line of argumentation. You made appeals to recent social justice claims like Renee Good and Preddy. I don't remember his first name, Alex Preddy, I think. Putting yourself in harm's way without jurisdiction being a form of vigilantism was another strong line of argumentation. The negatives that I had for you was making a smart appeal or an appeal to smart vigilantism rather than just general vigilantism.
I think Radish effed again.
No.
Okay, well, I'm just going to explain it
No,
to
no,
you.
no, keep going.
Well,
I'm
the
not here.
stream's F.
Okay.
That's not what they're talking about.
Anyways.
But your stream is
Okay.
down.
It's good
Yeah,
on the
stream went
YouTube
down.
side.
Okay.
There was a sort of failure to acknowledge vigilantism in the abstract with the Superman Batman example, which I felt like wasn't your strongest line of argumentation. But you did make good, strong claims to disproportionality and vigilantism being done right in certain circumstances and distinguishing vigilante justice versus vigilante violence. But I had it rated 7 on your side, the negative, and 8 to Lethe. So my outcome, since those are not real numbers, I rounded down and I gave it 6-4 Lethe. And that is my decision.
All right, 6-4 for the affirmative. No, please let me know for sure, but I do not think that the yeah, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say the stream is still working just fine on my monitor over here, so I think we're still
It
gold.
froze for a second.
Yeah, it froze
but
for a second.
we're-
I don't. The internet's just being shitty.
On the YouTube side,
All right, I'm sure it's solar flares. All right, so that is 6-4 for Myta. Jesus, are you ready for judgment, sir?
yeah, this was a tough one. Because I feel like I agree with Lethe more than Gorps, but the arguments put forth were very good from both sides. So starting with Lethe talking about the like you can use self-defense for your wife because that's an extension of you. That's just not how self-defense works. You can defend other people even if they're not related to you. This is why you and I would agree that Daniel Penny was a good guy. I found it odd that when the example came up of you protecting your grandma, you would say, okay, yeah, we could definitely do that. But if somebody else were to do that, maybe tied back to your understanding of the legality of self-defense, then you would say, no, I don't really understand why that would make a difference. If it was my grandma, then whether it's me or somebody else, I would not want her harmed. And yeah, the Superman thing, I just don't understand. I saw what you said in chat. I think that I agree with you that Superman and Batman are different. However, they are different in degree, not of kind. So I can't, that really dings you down for that. And then with Gorps, yeah, I think Gorps is strong on the prompt, establishing that it doesn't have to be, well, this example of vigilante violence is immoral, that the prompt is holistic or cohesive, whatever word you want to use, that it is always wrong, even if the word always isn't specifically in there. What else do I get here? And well, I guess you just I think you had a good opening and a good closing. So I will come down the other side with 6 for Garps and 4 for Lethe, but it was definitely close.
All right, so that's 4-6 from Lutch.
4-6. Yeah.
So as I said, we did indeed end up with a split decision here. So please, everybody, anywhere you can see that link, I've already sent it over to you. I think I sent it to your DMs, Lutch, as well as yours, Tyler, and who is the other person, Lethe. If all of y'all could please make sure you've got that into your chat. Chatters, I want to see a lot of votes here. We got a lot of people. So please, it takes nothing. It takes a second. Click the fucking button. Tell us who you think won this, because the judges couldn't decide. All right. Yeah. And for what it's worth, this was exactly what I thought it was going to be. I was looking forward to this debate, not only because of the prompt, but also because of the two debaters, and both of y'all did not disappoint. So thank y'all for that.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, of course.
I prepared for the completely wrong prompt.
Okay, Energy, tell us more.
I prepared for the mutual combat prompt because I am illiterate.
Oh, gotcha.
So all of this was pulled together from the second you started our debate.
Wow. Wow. Very professional. Very, very top shelf. Very professional. All right.
Nice.
So hopefully our last debate, both of the debaters know before they started the night what their actual prompt was. I guess we'll see. So everybody, there you go. You can take that information as you see fit. Y'all didn't really seem to care when it came to energy, not knowing what the prompt was. I'm doubting that you're going to care about this one, but we'll see. So I'm gonna give y'all just a couple more seconds here while I pull it up, but lock your votes in. 3, 2, 1, and show us the results. Wow. Okay, 12-8. That is a 6-4 victory for Gorps on the negative. Mutual combat should be federally legalized. What Gorps thought he was debating tonight. So on that debate, we have Tyler. Both of these are regular judges here in the DMZ. So this should be an absolute showcase debate of exactly what we're looking for. And hopefully both of the judges are going to come out not knowing what to do, just scratching their heads. So Tyler on the affirmative. I hope it's okay, Tyler, that I'm just putting Tyler because average debate enjoyer is just too goddamn long. So huzzah. All right. And
Tyler aid, it works. I like it.
Oh, Tyler aid it is. I'll get that fixed immediately. Doomer on the negative. Once again, like I said, mutual combat should be federally legalized. Both of y'all know exactly how the fuck this works, so I do not have to talk anymore. I'm going straight over there to you, Tyler aid. Please start us off. I'll start the clock when you start to talk.
Oh, here we are for the main topic, the headline debate of the night. Mutual combat should be federally legalized. Because I only picked the easy prompts, and this one obviously being a no-brainer, the over legislation of morality and law that we would have to mitigate could be mitigated by the free market just as easily, and we could still have dueling without any of the consequences today. You could have dueling as an industry of resolving disputes that was regulated like any other blood sport we have in our country today. Like we have football, people die from that all the time. We have boxing, people die from that all the time. People fight all the time to resolve their conflict. And a lot of those ways see death as something that could be the result. Dueling, the intent was not death. Sure, you were using guns, but the intent was a duel over honor, the same way men fight all the time. So to get rid of one because of antiquated technology that couldn't keep a competitor safe, to me, seems like just an antiquated view of looking at the world. We could tomorrow set up a dueling arena that was highly regulated. We could give people helmets to keep them from getting shot in the head, instant death. We could have medical staff on the scene, and we could bring back this form of highly skilled conflict resolution and make a sport out of it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. The only reason why that it was the way it is, in my opinion, leading into my second argument, the pussification of America, as George Carlin called it. About 15 years before dueling lost public sentiment, the women's suffrage movement began. I would argue that the statist I am arguing against wants to end our right to choice because he is a radical extremist feminist authoritarian that wants us to lick the boot the same way that he does. This nanny stater would have us, just like Mayor Bloomberg, not able to drink sodas that are of a certain size because he deemed that it's too bad for our health. We're not a free citizenry anymore. We need to be protected by the state. Doomer wants this top-down nanny state because he thinks that his way of living, his morality, is better than yours. You can have some cake sometimes, but not too much cake because that might, be bad for your body. And so we also have to regulate what you can eat. Our civilization relies on an enlightened electorate and their full slew of lights, including contract law. You should have the right to sign yourself up for something dangerous if two consenting adults agree to engage in it, especially if we regulate it to be more safe. There's absolutely no sane reason why we should not be able to have this in modern society, again, with the technology we have. Doomer probably makes the FDA look rational because they would at least allow you a choice and give you warnings. They at least allow you to smoke and tell you it's bad for you. He just wants to outright ban it because his morality, his sense of what's dangerous is better than the American electorate. This is not a communist nation, Doomer. I'm sorry. Take the Americans' government, boot out of your mouth, and remember that we are a nation of the people. They have a full slew of rights, and we will not be held down. So for this bootlicker, I have one thing to give you. You can suck on my fucking freedom finger.
Wow. Okay. So just so you know, Tyler, your microphone went back to being super echoey and like in and out. I don't know what changed. It was really buttery earlier, but now it's just oily. All right, Doomer, 3 minutes is going on the clock for you to respond to the freedom finger, my friend. I'll start the clock when you start to talk. Use this time to rebut or to cross as you see fit.
Yeah, I guess first I will ask the stadium announcer what federal mechanism you want implemented here.
What federal mechanism? There doesn't have to be one. Like when things in the way we make laws in the United States is prevent action. If something's not written down as an action, it's allowable.
Well, I'm saying you want this to be federally legalized. What does that mean to you?
That means no laws in the book saying that it's illegal to do dueling under certain criteria. You don't need to have a law for anything.
Not mutual. Are you just saying dueling is mutual combat then?
Yeah, mutual combat, dueling, yeah. That's my particular version.
Dueling, or is it just like mutual combat is like like dueling is just a form of mutual combat?
Oh, I mean, if you wanted to use, I was using the two synonymously. I'm not talking about the old school gun duel specifically,
what
but that does encompass
it. Would you define as mutual combat or dueling? Like
any
rather than just like assault?
Any two individuals that mutually agree to engage in a particular version of combat, they're both consenting adults that understand the risks that are in front of them. Yeah, implied consent, contract clause.
Yeah. Do you think like how does that work? Like in the heat, can you withdraw consent at some point?
That would probably be laid out in the rules. Absolutely, you could have some sort of a safe word. It could be regulated. There could be certain. If something happens, like let's say you have lighting in the arena and the light falls, that could be built into the rules. Absolutely. But I don't think that's anything the federal government needs to handle. That could be set up. A league could be set up for dueling.
Yeah, I'll stop you right there. That isn't something that the federal government needs to handle. Yeah. That should just be a state's issue, right?
That could be, it could be,
like, I'm completely fine with it being fine in the state. Like you can regulate whatever you want in the state. That's the 10th Amendment. It's not explicitly enumerated in the Constitution.
Yeah, so you'd be fine with this at a state level, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the prompt.
Well, because of the 14th Amendment, because of the 14th Amendment, it would have to be legal at a federal level in order for it to be legal at a state level because of how the 14th Amendment works. So if you're fine with it happening at a state level, by dint of just your own desire, you're saying that federal level would have to be that way already.
There are states that already have forms of mutual combat legalized, but that's not, implicated to every other state because of the 14th Amendment in their own state.
Like if we're just talking all mutual combat, like fighting, UFC should be legalized. Absolutely. I was going more for something more extreme.
States can sanction that. I'm saying that there's not really a right to the federal government to legalize it. It's up to the states to be able to do that.
You're arguing rights. I don't care.
The state's ultimate right is for their own police authorities. Correct? The state doesn't relegate that to the federal government. The state has their own right to that.
To some degree, there is a federalist state. Like there's a supremacy clause. No. Supremacy clause exists. I disagree with you.
Yeah, but you can't make laws pertaining to anything. Otherwise, we'd have gun laws pertaining to it. Before it's been deemed by SCOTUS, just because something is violent doesn't mean it affects things like the Commerce Clause. It's out of relegation of Congress.
You can say that, but I can give you tons of examples. The states have the power to control their own elections. We see tons of federal election law
because it's enumerated.
Guardrails for it. So yes, something has to.
Where is it enumerated that the federal government has powers over the state's police powers?
In order for a state to have something legal, it has to be legal on the federal level. You're asking me what policy I want. I don't need a policy. That's not how laws work. Laws are meant to prevent something. The federal
government doesn't have the power to regulate everything on the state level, correct? You understand that?
It doesn't. Yes, I understand. They, to some degree, they do, though. I'm disagreeing with you. I'm telling you that the supremacy clause exists, and you misunderstand. I have to be able to answer your question.
I'll get to my opening.
Yep, I'll tell you what. Yep, we'll go ahead and go over to the opening. You'll get the chance to cross-examine in a few moments. Doomer, 3 minutes on the clock for you, uninterrupted. Go ahead and start it up.
Yeah, I guess I just want to focus on what exactly the affirmative is asking the federal government to do here. In the United States, we already have many forms of consensual combat. Boxing is legal, MMA is legal. wrestling, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, countless other combat sports are legal. This debate is not about whether consensual violence can ever be legal. It already is. The question is whether there should be federal expansions to lawful interpersonal violence and override state decisions about assault and public safety. I oppose that for three reasons. First is the constitutional authority I was kind of prefacing there. The federal government does not possess a general police power. States regulate assault, battery, homicide, public order. SCOTUS has repeatedly emphasized in cases like US v. Lopez, US v. Morrison, that ordinary violent conduct is a core area of state authority, not Congress. The affirmative must explain not only why mutual combat should be legal, but why Congress has the authority to impose that. If Washington wants a mutual combat carve-out, it can create one. If Texas wants one, it can create one. But the federal government can't grasp control by creating new limits to state police powers. Secondly is practical enforcement. The affirmative relies heavily on consent, but consent to violence is uniquely difficult to verify. What if someone is intoxicated? What if someone's pressured? Did they revoke consent during the fight? Was there some kind of standing agreement before the fight? Did one participant exceed the agreed level of force? These questions become even more difficult when someone's unconscious, hospitalized, or dead. The law already recognizes these problems. That's why combat sports uses things like referees, rules, medical oversight, and other safeguards. Tyler wants the legal benefits of consent without explaining how those safeguards are replaced in these other circumstances. Thirdly is a lack of demonstrated necessity. He's arguing kind of like a vague notion of liberty due to like a pussification of America and whatnot. Liberty is important, but it doesn't alone justify an expansion of legal violence. The burden is on the affirmative to show a meaningful social benefit to this. Will crime decrease? Will violence decrease? Will disputes be resolved more peacefully? There's little evidence for any of these claims, and logically, if you permit acts of public violence, you will see an increase in acts of public violence. The affirmative is arguing that the state should have no right in limiting this potential risk to the public. That is logically foreseeable and only for a vague notion of personal liberty. My position is simple. I'm not arguing that all consensual fighting is wrong. I'm not arguing that adults need constant protection from themselves. I'm arguing that the affirmative has failed to show why there should be a new nationalized category of law, lawful interpersonal violence, when states rightfully possess the authority to regulate this area, and existing combat sports already provide legal outlets for consensual combat.
Right. 3 minutes is on the clock now for you, Tyler. Go ahead and rebut or cross as you see fit. I'll start it up when you're ready.
Okay, so again, I'm just going to restate what I was cut off of when I was trying to answer questions, then I'll go into a little bit of cross, but I'm confused here because I just heard his entire argument again saying I'm asking the Fed to do something, to seize some power, but nowhere in my opening statement did I say anything like that. And then when I was directly asked about it, even though I was cut off halfway through my sentence, I said, that's not how laws work. I don't want the federal government to do anything. I don't want them to overrule states. I don't want them to change federalism as he suggested, even though that was never stated anywhere in my argument. I don't want any of that. I want them to simply not do anything at all. And that would be enough for them allowing this to happen. So his entire argument to me is just making up a straw man and beating that straw man down. So I want to ask, just to be sure, Doomer, where in my prompt did I suggest the federal government take any action whatsoever, including, as you said, changing how federalism works, overruling states, or passing any sort of legislation?
I would say not your prompt, the prompt. Could you reread it? Mutual combat should be federally legalized. That kind of implies that it's either not, or are you arguing that the current framework that we have for like combat sports is mutual combat, and you're just arguing that the thing we have today is what you want?
I'm not making either of those arguments. The argument I'm making is it is legalized because there's no law
in the
making
prompt
it
is
illegal.
the fact that it's federal. Like you want some kind of federal change. That's why it's federally
No, that's
legalized.
not what
You
I'll
understand
explain my
federal-
argument again because I don't think you're understanding my argument. My argument is it is legal because there's no law preventing it. We don't make laws that
There
allow
is no
you
law
to do a
preventing
thing.
it right now.
Can you name me a single
You-
law that
That's
is
why
in the
I'm
United
asking you
States?
to
Hold on. This is mine. Reclaiming my time. Can you name me a single law in the United States that allows you to do something that you weren't able to do prior to the law being passed?
Rephrase the question.
Can you name me a single law in the United States, federal, state, or local, that allows you to take an action that you could not prior to the law being passed? A single one.
Limits on speed, I guess. Like, I don't know. There's specific affirmative defenses written into the law and statutes,
Limits on
like
speed.
to assault, self-defense, I guess.
None of these things, like,
No,
yeah, you
self-defense
cannot.
there. That's written
Self-defense is
into law as permittable. It's an affirmative defense to assault.
yes, but that would have been illegal for you to do. It would have been legal for you to do if there was no law. Correct? You're
No,
not
the
understanding my
assault is
question.
the illegal part. The self-defense.
If there was
is the
no
affirmative.
law on the books at all, would you be able to defend yourself legally?
Self-defense? No, because you would be assaulting a person, they would be assaulting you. It'd both
I'm
be
saying
assault.
no laws at all. No assault laws on the books too, not just self-defense law.
No, if there's no laws, there's anarchy. Like, I don't know what
Yeah, exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. It. There's no law that allows you to do something in the United States. All the laws are there
There
is
are
to
laws though,
prevent
that
you
allow
from
you to
doing
do
things.
things like affirmative defense.
Self-defense
law
is a
allow you to
caveat.
defend yourself.
No, because those laws are a caveat to a greater law, which is assault laws. You're not allowed to go up and punch
So
somebody
it is a law.
unless X, Y, and Z.
It doesn't matter if it's a caveat.
Yes,
It is a law, correct?
a
So it
law
doesn't
is in
matter what you're
place to
saying.
prevent you from assaulting people, and that law is written in a certain way that allows
Yes,
if
and then
you were
there's
being
also
attacked
carve-outs
to
to
defend
that law.
yourself. You
There's
could always
carve-outs.
defend yourself. I'm reclaiming my time. You could
You're not
always
Actually, we're
defend.
past.
You're
We're
reclaiming.
past.
in the
We're
open.
past the. Yeah, we're in the
There's
open.
carve-outs written-
Try not to talk over each other, gentlemen. I'm sorry. The
Yeah,
clock's
so the
going. Go
point
ahead.
that I'm
Carve-outs
trying to
written
make here.
into the statutes, such as self-defense, that
The
allow
point I'm
you to
making
have
here.
a defense to.
I've heard it. You've said
to
it 4
assault.
times now.
Do you know
You've
what
said
else
it
is
4
written
times
in-
now.
Well,
I'm trying to
real quick.
rebut this, and you're just repeating yourself over. No. I'm trying to
Well,
rebut
I'll
your
finish.
argument.
I'll add one more thing and I'll let you go. There's also one more thing codified in certain states, and that is actual mutual combat, and it's codified in a way to preclude your accessibility to self-defense as a legal defense.
Okay,
So
but
it's
that
actually
doesn't.
codified as illegal in many states.
You're missing the point that I'm making here. You are allowed to. You're not allowed to assault people because of a law. Self-defense
state
is
law,
not
correct.
granted. It's a caveat out of the assault law.
every law, assault
It's a
is
level
legal.
of assault that they're allowing, but they're passing a law to make all other forms of assault illegal. So you already have that ability to do that. The law is preventing you from doing that unless the circumstances line up. It doesn't give you that ability. Laws in the United States do not give you the ability to do something. They're only put there to prevent you from doing
That's why I'm
something
asking you the
greater.
mechanism. What do you want to see should be federally legalized?
I've
Do you
already
want to
answered
see
this
assault be
5
federally
times.
legalized?
I
Well,
answered this
I'm not getting it
5
then.
times.
Reframe
Nothing.
that then.
Absolutely nothing.
So
No
you don't want
law.
anything to be changed.
They pass 0 laws. They leave it as it is. That's my argument. Don't pass any new laws to make this illegal. Done. Yeah. So your entire counter argument is completely out the window. Because I'm not asking them to do anything. I'm just asking them not to make it illegal. That's it.
Well, right now, what do you define mutual combat as? You just defined it as pretty much consensual assault, correct?
I mean, whatever we know.
You want consensual assault to be federally legalized when
No,
right
that
now
was
assault
addressing
is
your
across
no.
every state,
I think
regardless
you're
of consent,
confused
is
because the
illegal.
only reason we were talking about assault is because you brought up
You're just not arguing the
self-defense.
prompt. Like you're
You
just
see,
trying to
I see
define
you. I
mutual
see you
combat
saying
as
that,
some
but
like amorphous thing of
no, I think you're
mutual combat is
confused. I
just
think you're
the
confused.
combat
If you let me address it, I could clear up this confusion because the only reason I
Alright,
brought
go.
up assault was because you brought up self-defense, and I was explaining how self-defense is a version of attacking somebody that's not covered under assault. That's the only reason that was brought up is because you brought up a point that I was
No, it is
going
covered
back to
under
my
assault. I'm saying it's
actual
an
argument,
affirmative
which
defense
is
to
the
assault. You
prompt,
commit the
which
assault,
is
which
the
is
prompt,
illegal, and
which
in
is the
court you're not
prompt.
held
If
to
you
those
want to
things
go
because
back
it's
to
an
the
affirmative
prompt,
defense
you're
to
cutting
you.
me off every time I try to talk, man. If you want to go
You're
back
just
to
trying to
the
talk for the
prompt,
full 15
if
minutes.
you want
I'm
to
trying
go
to
back to
respond to
the
what you're
prompt,
saying.
I was answering your question. If you want to go back to the prompt, my point is, I'm not asking the federal government to do anything. I'm asking them to keep the status quo of no laws making this illegal. So your entire argument about
Well,
how I'm trying to change
you're
federalism,
not making an
overrule
affirmative
states,
argument
is
that mutual
completely out the
combat
window.
should not remain illegal. But you're
That's
saying
that
that
was
it
my
should be
contract law.
legalized. What do you
I'm
define
clear.
legalized as being?
See,
Some kind of action?
it doesn't.
You're not
No,
saying
I've
mutual
already
combat laws
answered.
should remain how they are. You're saying
I've
mutual
already
combat
answered.
should be federally legalized. Can you make an
If you want
affirmative
to,
argument for that, or are
okay.
you just saying that it is how it is right now?
I have already made the affirmative argument for that it should be legal because of contract law and consenting adults. That's my entire opener.
You
You
can't
haven't gotten to
contract to a
that.
crime being permitted to you. I can't go
It's not a
sign a
crime.
contract to let you murder me.
That's
I
not
can't go sign a
what. That's
contract to
not
let
what
you
mutual
assault me.
combat is. That's not what mutual. Yes, you can actually. You can go sign a contract to have somebody assault you. That's what boxing is.
Yeah, in certain things that is permitted, and that's permitted by the state, not federally.
Oh,
It's
so you
legalized
can.
on the
So you
state level.
can. So
Yeah.
you're wrong. So you just
Well,
said
no,
something
there
that was
are carve-outs.
incorrect.
You can go look at some of the laws. Actually, the carve-outs are specific in them. Even in Texas, let's see. Texas actually has codified mutual combat laws where the victim's effective consent or the actor's reasonable belief that the victim consented to the actor's conduct is a defense to prosecution under assault. This is under the stipulations. The conduct did not threaten or inflict serious bodily injury. And then the second subpart is for things like occupations, for like boxing, MMA. So that's written into the law there. That's understood. That's legal. I don't understand why you're bringing it up.
Okay, I mean, I'm saying preserve the status quo.
So you want it illegal?
I looked at the status quo and said, we have all these things
The
right now.
status
Let's not
quo
pass
is
any new laws.
where is mutual combat legal? How is it status quo?
Mutual combat would UFC would encompass mutual combat as well as
No,
dueling.
that's
The
combat
example that
sports.
I brought up
That's
was
two people
dueling.
fighting for money, like prize fighting.
Did you
That's
listen to
not
my
mutual combat.
introduction? Because I gave you a very clear example that I
Well, yeah,
used
that's why
multiple
I'm saying during this
Like-
cross thing, I'm saying you're trying to broaden it open just to combat sports, or saying that
Yes,
like the
okay.
status quo is that mutual combat's legal because combat
This
sports.
is a
That's
decision.
not
Yeah,
true.
you're
Combat
having a
sports
meta
is-
argument about
No,
you're making a
bringing up
meta
combat
critique of
sports,
my argument.
and I'm saying combat
I'm
sports
the aff.
is sanctioned
If you're
by
not
the
going to
state.
address my contract law argument, and you want to focus on this
Where is
silly
the-
idea that
listen,
I'm
where's
trying
the
to tell the federal
federal sanction that allows
government to
combat
do
sports?
something, I am more than happy to go ahead and argue your silly argument about the federal government doing something, because I never made that argument. I never made that claim. That's not how laws
Well,
work
when you
in the
start
United
looking
States.
that stuff up, could you start?
So
with
if you're
the 10th
asking why
Amendment?
I'm not answering questions over here, it's because that's where you're arguing your point is over here.
Well,
If you want to go to that other subject, we
when
can.
you bring up the three things that I did talk about in my opening, like constitutionality, we can focus on that if you want to. But yeah, the 10th Amendment, anything not unenumerated like police powers is left up to the state. Things like prosecution for assault is left up to the state. If you're wanting a federal cutout
That's not true.
to mutual, what isn't true?
Both of the things you said. Can you pass federal
The
regulation?
10th
on state
Amendment isn't
policing?
true.
No,
Unenumerated
I'm
powers
arguing
aren't left up to the state?
your interpretation of it is completely false. What you're saying, the absolute statements you're saying as your interpretation of the
No.
10th Amendment is not
General
the 10th
police
Amendment.
powers are left up to the state.
General police
There-
powers, yes.
There
You
are.
said all
I
police
can get into
power.
this. There are police powers left up to the federal thing. Like if you assault someone on federal property, you can bring up. Hey, if you want to say your argument is just in Washington D.C., we can have mutual
That's
combat.
not what I'm saying,
even though I
because
don't
there's
think
other
DC
examples.
relegates that.
There's
but-
other examples. The federal government polices hundreds of thousands of violent crimes every year, most of which don't
Yes,
take place in
crimes
Washington.
that they have the power to prosecute. Other
Yes,
things
you said
such
they
as state
don't.
crimes, they do not. Like state assault charges, they do not.
That's not true.
You're
They can
wanting
go
a
into
federal.
states.
No, you're wanting a federal
That's not
system
true
that would bar the states from prosecution of assaults. Correct?
not true either.
If
You
two
can-
people
you can
consent,
get
you
your
think there should be
venue
a
switched.
federal law barring prosecution, right?
No, I did not say that at all.
Then what are you arguing?
You're just making up my. I already told you this like 6 times. You're incapable of understanding. I'm arguing for the status quo, where the federal government does not.
The status quo
right
well,
now.
you're just saying
Right
mutual
now. Hold
combat
on.
combat sports and the UFC
Right
legal,
now.
so
Right
status quo,
now.
that's not what I'm saying.
Right now. If you let me get out more than a half a sentence, maybe you'd understand my fucking argument. You would be making shit up. Right now, everything is legalized. Mutual combat is legalized
No.
in several instances. Yes.
No.
Yes, it is.
Mutual
You
combat is
agreed to
literally
this.
codified in many states as illegal as a preclusion to using self-defense as
Many
an affirmative
states
defense.
right now, correct.
Texas
Many
and
states.
Washington.
Many
are two
states
states
right
that have it
now
somewhat
allow
codified.
it. Yes, that's all I'm asking. So yes, I'm correct
So
in my question. So my
Do you-
point is,
which of
in a
those do you want to be
federal
the federal
level,
framework?
neither. I don't ask for any federal framework. What I'm telling
So
you
what do
is
you want to
right
be
now.
federally
Oh my
legal?
God!
You
If
just
you
don't
let
want
me
them to
finish
go
a
step
fucking
over Washington
sentence,
and Texas.
you would understand this very simple concept
just
if
trying
you
to
let
keep
me
you on the
finish a
prompt.
sentence. You can't let me finish a sentence. I haven't been able to speak. You keep asking the same question
All right,
over
well,
and over.
filibuster turn purple. This is getting old.
Maybe if you let me finish a sentence, you'd understand my argument. You wouldn't be making shit up because nobody's asking the federal government to do something, and still you're going back to the straw man.
The prompt is really asking the federal government to do something.
What I'm telling you is currently it is federally legal because there's no law preventing it. That's how laws work in the United States. I am arguing we pass no further laws to make it illegal because that's how laws work in the United States. We do not make laws that grant you abilities to do things. That's not how fucking laws work.
Okay, well then question then. Let's say, okay, we know Washington and Texas have some codified laws, correct? We agree on that?
Yes.
Are you saying that Nebraska needs to have some sort of codified law
No.
like that?
No, I'm not.
Why? Do they have a right to
Yes,
their
they
own state in
do.
that way? Okay,
Yes, they do.
then why do you agree with the prompt that it should be federally legalized if we just agree on pretty much 90%? It's just the
Because
federal part,
currently,
apparently.
it is federally legalized because we have no laws on the book making it illegal. In order to be
All right, so you
federally
just want to
legalized,
torture the prompt.
in
I'm
order to be
saying the prompt.
federally legalized, I'm explaining. You ask me a question, you don't even let me answer. I'm telling you, federally legalized means no laws banning it. That's what federally legalized means. And I
okay.
want to preserve that status quo.
So
How are
there's
you
no
not understanding this?
there's no federal law illegalizing assault on a state level. What is that just legal?
There's no what? I'm sorry.
There's no federal assault laws outside of like assaulting like a federal official or whatnot. Like if I assault you, that's not a federal charge. There's no federal assault. Does that mean it's legal?
No.
States have their own charges.
Yes.
And what it seems to me is you're asking that the federal government bar them being able to charge that due to certain circumstances, like these two people consented. I'm saying that's not right. They don't have the power to do that federally. It's up to the state.
So two people. I'm not saying. You're making an argument about ability. Absolutely, the fucking federal government has the ability to say that we want to ban a certain activity in the states, and the states have to abide by it. That's
No,
what the supremacy
they
clause
have to have the
absolutely is.
authority constitutionally to do that. Otherwise, they'd be banning guns.
They do. I'm telling you, they do have that authority to do that. And
Then why aren't they banning guns? It's almost
Dude,
like
guns
in
have
these other
nothing to do with the
cases that
conversation.
violence is
Switching the
explicitly
subject to
outside of the
something.
purview because it's not
Switching the
Congress
subject to
clause
something
issue.
completely different because you don't have an argument here. Is
No, it's because it's
the
rooted
fact
in
that
the
you don't
10th
have an
Amendment and you
argument
want to
here. Why are they banning guns? Because the people don't want fucking guns banned. That's why.
I'm not the one running from the prompt. You're literally saying it's just the status quo that mutual combat's legal. You're ignoring all the
I am
things
literally
that are
defining the
codified in
prompt.
law, saying it's not.
I am defining the prompt and how it
You're trying to
practically works
stretch the
in
prompt,
reality.
saying the
I'm
combat
defining the
source
prompt.
is mutual combat.
I am defining the prompt. When you make something legal at a federal level, you don't need to pass legislation for it. All you need to do is have no legislation saying it's illegal. That's how our laws have always worked in the United States. That's what something being federally legal means. The government doesn't ban it. They do not pass laws that grant you abilities to do things. That's not how laws work. I'm defining what federally legal means in the prompt. And all you're saying is you're not arguing the prompt. That's not a rebuttal to my definition. That's a concession.
I'm saying mutual combat is generally understood by the public, like in the places it is codified in law, like Texas, Washington, South Carolina, Colorado. These places actually recognize it as something. I'm not trying to stretch it to some amorphous thing or trying to say it's combat sports or try to say that it's a federal issue. Anything that's not specifically barred is legal. If you want to make that argument, go for it. I'm saying on the prompt itself, mutual combat shouldn't be federally legalized because it's not their purview. On a personal level, I wouldn't say that it's beneficial to society, but on a kind of United States level,
what
on
your
a state
opinion
level,
of
yeah,
their
they
purview
should be
has
able
to
to
do
do
with
it. It's their power as to police their own state. That's why the federal government shouldn't have
You know
limits.
what a federal murder charge? You know, you can charge that in states, even though if it doesn't cross state lines or didn't happen on federal property. It is within their purview to say this specific thing could be murder. You can't consent to it. No, hold on.
The state can't charge it because they consented to be
just
murdered.
let you talk for like 20 fucking sentences. Let me get one out. They can charge you for federal murder. They can say this action, we don't consent of it as the government because that's an inalienable right, and the federal government follows the Declaration of Independence definition of inalienable right.
They can't tell the state to not charge it.
Shut the fuck up and let me finish the sentence. Because that's an inalienable right, the federal government says that falls under the definition of federal murder. That then gives them the authority to arrest somebody.
You just filibuster. I'm saying that doesn't fucking matter because they cannot make the state not charge it.
Yeah, they don't have
you're
to.
trying
They can
to
charge
say the
federal
federal government
murder.
can force a state to not charge things. They can't prosecute assault because people consented. In the abstract, they couldn't even charge murder if they consented. So why are
you missing my point? You were missing. You said your claim was the federal government.
My point.
You see I'm addressing your claim directly. The claim was the federal government does not have the authority to police violent actions done within a state. I brought up federal murder, showing you an instance where the federal government does have that exact authority, and then telling you how they could redefine federal murder to encompass this specific type of combat. They absolutely have that authority and could do it tomorrow. So again, you are just making shit up.
The state from charging murder. Show me
I
where they
say
can
that
prevent the
I
state
never
from
made
charging
that
murder.
claim. Nobody made that claim,
That
bro. Are you
that's what you
lost?
want when you're saying this should be
No,
federally
no,
legalized.
it's not. You're making shit up again. Are you lost? Can you address my federal murder point?
Right now, mutual combat in places is not
So
legalized.
no. So you're not going to
Are you
address the
just saying
point. You're
that
just
it's
going to move
federally
on.
legal there?
Okay.
You can do it. It just doesn't matter that the state doesn't want it.
What's that?
I'm saying right now, mutual combat is illegal in many places. You want it to be federally legalized. Are you saying that the state can still charge these things, or there's no supremacy clause that the federal government would have in
Are
that?
you really not understanding? I've answered this question for you exactly twice. I'm not saying they are states are not compelled to make this legal. When something is federally legal, that means they have not passed a law to ban
Can,
it. That's
a
how
state
laws
cannot
work.
a state cannot ban something if it is federally legal. What can a state ban that's federally legal?
A state can ban whatever. Federally legal literally just means the federal government has not barred it yet. So if they can ban whatever they any item, I can't even think of one. Any item they want, they could say tomorrow, we don't want sugar in New York State. We're going to ban all sugar from New York State. There's no law in the books federally that says
The
they have.
federal
Your
government
argument,
can do that?
no. Here, your argument here is basically because I don't like vanilla, or because I like vanilla, I hate chocolate. I am not saying anyone should be compelled to allow mutual combat in all 50 states. Nowhere
what
is
you're
that in
saying
my
with the
argument.
prompt.
No,
That is the
nowhere
prompt.
is it. No, it's not.
Then you're just not arguing the prompt.
No, it's not. I'm saying the states should have the right to choose the laws that they want for their local state
Exactly.
government. That's how
The
federalism
federal
works.
aspect is what makes this out of bounds for you. You can avoid it
That's
all
how
you want, but the
federalism
prompt is mutual
works.
combat should
I
be
don't think you
federally
understand basic
legalized.
concepts. If a
No,
local
you're
jurisdiction
avoiding
wants to
basic
ban
concepts that I'm
something,
bringing up.
I explained what federally legal means. You never challenged my definition. You moved on. I explained how federal
What
laws
have I been
ban
talking about this time?
things.
I've been challenging it.
You
All right.
haven't. You moved on. My definition of federally legal has been unchallenged.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and go to the Q&A section because I'm not sure that you guys are actually Q&Aing to each other. So I am going to jump in there first. Tyler, this is a super quick and easy, and hopefully, oops, sorry, let me fix that prompt on the screen there again. Hopefully this is actually going to get past the circle we were just dancing in. Tyler, will you please tell me the difference between the term legalized and the term decriminalized? Parse that out for me, please.
Legalized means somebody is allowed to do, there's nothing barring somebody from doing a specific action. Decriminalized means it's still illegal, but there's not a penalty toward it.
Okay, and those are your definition. I'm sorry, those are your definitions, or that's like the actual legal definitions?
Legalized is anything that's not against the law, and a law has to be passed to bar a specific action in the United States. That's how our laws work.
Okie dokie. So Myta, you ready with a question for Tyler?
Yes, sir. So my question for Tyler is, should there be an upper limit on combat sports if there is a mutual agreement by all participants in which they incur harm? And would you be in favor of a form of combat sport such as, but not limited to, something like a death race?
I'm sure we could regulate it. I'm sure there'd be all sorts of unacceptable versions of combat sports we wouldn't want. I'm not thinking that those particular bad versions are enough to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I can concede that there's probably several bad things, like a death race that you could think of that I wouldn't get behind. It doesn't mean all combat sports or all combat in general should be barred.
All right, and Jesus. Question for Tyler, please.
Yes, sir. Great debate, gentlemen. I am left a little bit confused though. So, Tyler, can you speak to how, on the one hand, you're stating that you're asking for the status quo. When you're claiming that you're asking for the status quo when there are states that make mutual combat illegal, and so based on the prompt using the legalized, that can you square that circle?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you understand what I mean?
What I'm saying, yes, the definition of legalized, which I gave pretty damn clearly, I think here, how the federal government mechanically legalizes things is they do nothing. They don't pass any laws to say that thing is illegal. That's how our government works. You are allowed to do all the things that there's not not a law out there that says you cannot do. All of those things as an American are able for you to do. So if there is no federal law saying no combat sports, then combat sports are thus legalized and allowed.
So
I think it was a
you're
two-part question. I think that was only one part.
Yeah, go
The other
ahead,
part-
Jesus, if you got more there.
well, yeah. So asking for the status quo, but there are states that have laws that make mutual combat illegal.
Oh yeah, okay.
Um,
All right, I got you. I remember. So in that argument, that's what I said about if you like vanilla, it doesn't mean you hate chocolate. Just because I don't want the federal government to pass a law making this illegal everywhere doesn't mean I don't think states and local governments don't have that right to make that illegal on certain levels. If they don't want combat sports inside their state, that's perfectly fine. I'm not trying to impose anything on them like he is. I'm not the boot in the mouth authoritarian in this argument.
Okay. So we do have a question coming in from chat. Again, chatters, if you guys have questions, throw them into the jar. I'll get to those as soon as we are done with our round of questioning. We're now going to shoot over to you, Doomer. So funny enough, we had a debate last night about natural rights and what that means. So if we can agree that the right to defend oneself from physical harm is something that we are born with, or that is natural to us, inherent, which I think you do agree with, but if not, then you can correct me there and continue from there. The federal government should be tasked with protecting our natural rights. I feel like that was the core of the debate last night. So why would the federal government not be, I'm sorry, I skipped a step there, defending ourselves physically? However, you can have significant physical ailments and or deterioration from a negative sense of self-worth, right? Why would me defending my honor or my wife's honor in something such as mutual combat not fall under the natural rights that the federal government is tasked with protecting?
I might need you to rephrase.
Yep. Nope. Let me try it again. Nope. This is for Doomer.
Okay.
So,
My bad. I wasn't paying.
nope. It's okay. So, if the defense of self is a natural law, and we would agree that the federal government's responsibility is to help protect our inherent rights, our inherent natural rights, then why would me protecting my wife's honor or my offspring's honor, why would me not choosing to engage with Lutch after Lutch has impugned my wife's honor, why would that not be my natural right and therefore be something that the federal government should be protecting?
Yeah, I think self-defense comes more towards like your right to life, and kind of like if you're defending honor, I think that kind of abstractly goes into places you don't want to go. Like if you're defending your sister's honor by killing her because she did something against your religion or whatnot. So I think I'd strongly separate self-defense being like defense of your life versus something like defense of honor.
Okay, good stuff. Myta, a question for Doomer, please.
Yes, sir. So my question to Doomer is, do you believe the legalization of combat sports could be good for allowing expansion of revenue through entertainment while allowing those with violent tendencies and lack of availability to move to state in which it's legal to have a more pragmatic outcome for such?
I would say we already have that in the form of the legalized combat sports, how they're sanctioned on a state level. Yeah, if you want to move to a place that has a more beneficial, like legal field to you in combat sports, go for it. Outside of that, though, I think it's the ultimate right to the state under their constitutional authorities to kind of police their own state. Um, I I'm not sure which states still have combat sports illegal. I think it's most of the U.S. I could be wrong, but outside of that, the reason they wouldn't have it legal right now is because probably current restrictions on the books that they have that, I guess they have the freedom to have.
Okay.
And Lutch, a question for Doomer, please.
Yes, sir. So, this is where my confusion really came from. So, what is the difference between a sanctioned MMA fight and what you think Tyler is asking for?
I wasn't 100% sure on what Tyler was asking for in that debate. It seemed like a couple of things. I guess like I can put it in the normal frame of like how we view mutual combat is just like two dudes at a bar wanting to go fight, or two friends wanting to wrestle out for one reason or another. And I'd say the differences in those aspects is like a UFC match that's sanctioned is for money. These people are doing it for a promotion. That there's a big incentive. These people are paying, taxes on all this revenue. There is a state benefit to it. Where in the other thing, it's really just a state risk, and the state has that freedom to mitigate these risks for the
So,
general public.
so would it be illegal to have a sanctioned fight where no one was getting paid? I'm not sure how the money comes into the equation.
Well, the legality is on the state. There's unpaid sanctioned events happening all the time, but there's still like a professional like portfolio kind of benefit. Like there's a benefit outside of some like amorphous thing as of liberty or honor. Like there's a professional element to those.
All right.
Okay, I don't really understand how that changes anything. But
If I'm
yeah,
in an
go ahead.
MMA fight and fighting someone, I stand to gain something from that, even if it's unpaid. There's rankings, even if it's an exhibition match, people are watching.
yeah, but
or
how is
whatnot.
that not
And
the case with just a backyard brawl? You have value there. There's
there's
your
no
ego, your
there's
reputation.
no stand. It's just between friends. I mean, if like I said, like that honor or liberty argument, but the circumstances surrounding those two are quite a bit different.
Okay.
All right. Very cool. All right. Thank you, judges. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go into our closing arguments. Oh, wait. No, we've got questions from the chatters. So our first question here is from Alley Cat. Thank you for the question. Tyler, what federal law is currently stopping Mortal Kombat today? What federal law is currently prohibiting trial or mutual combat?
I don't think there is a federal law because those crappy movies keep coming out. The First Amendment protects them.
I would like an actual. Okay, good.
Yeah. What was the last? What federal law presents what? What was the?
Yep. No. What federal law is currently stopping Mortal Kombat or mutual combat today?
I don't think there is one. I know that's what I'm arguing. Is we keep it that way. How legalizing something works on the federal level is we just don't ban it, and then it's legal by default. The default state of actions is legalized.
Okay, and the other question here is from Razor. Thanks for the sub there, by the way. So would mutual combat be just grudge matches, or can it be a mechanism to settle debts that have gotten out of hand? That wasn't directed at either of you specifically, so we'll give it to both of you. But since you just went, Tyler, I'm going to go to you, Doomer. Would mutual combat be just a grudge match, or could it be a mechanism for settling debts that have gotten out of hand?
It's kind of dealer's choice. I think I'm the neg, so I was more waiting on the affirmative to bring up what their argument would be.
Sure.
In the common sense, I view it, and kind of how it's codified, like Texas has it to where if you consent or the actor's reasonable belief to the victim is that you consented, like your actions made them think that you consented, then there's a defense, that affirmative defense to assault there. But it is still under the purview that it doesn't even threaten or inflict serious bodily injury. So you do it on concrete. I'm sure that kind of argument even falls through. But yeah, that's kind of how I generally just see it. Just two individuals consenting to assault, pretty much.
Okay. And Tyler, do you believe that mutual combat would be just used for grudge matches, or could it also be a mechanism for settling debts or situations that have gotten out of hand?
I believe it could be, and is free to be used for whatever reason people wanted to. And if those are some reasons, then absolutely sure. But I think the most valid reason under a capitalist system would be to preserve something like the UFC, where there's a giant entertainment complex built up around it and people make billions of dollars. So I think the number one way it would be used is for money.
All right. Very cool. So we are going to go ahead and get into our closing arguments. I think that was all the questions. Yep. Double checking. So Tyler, 3 minutes is on the clock now for you. Let us hear your closing argument, sir.
Oh, so based on the founders of our government and the founders of the Blackstonian legal system, I didn't want to be this technical. I did look all this up and didn't want to include it in here, but this is exactly what legalization is. There's two mechanisms in which to legalize an act under our current justice system. Again, the Blackstonian legal system that's existed for hundreds and hundreds of years, predates the United States. This is how it's been for a long time. Something is 100% legal unless there is a rule to bar it, a law to bar it, a regulation to bar it. Legalizing something is either A, doing absolutely nothing and allowing people to do it, or B, if there is already a law on the books that prevents said action, removing that law from the books is the other way to legalize something. Since there's no law on the books federally banning this, the only conceivable way that we can talk legalization would be to not make a law to block it. That's how our federal government works. They do not write laws that grant us abilities. So that being reiterated for the 90th fucking time, this is how to legalize something at the federal level in the United States. I think those mechanics are being lost, and you're thinking legalization requires new legislation. But no, it requires less legislation. I'm talking about removing laws from the books and becoming less authoritarian. That's why I called you a bootlicker. That's why this whole thing makes you look like the pro-government person, because I'm saying we don't regulate. We regulate less. We do less law. Most of Doomer's arguments were strawman in the beginning, and I think he dropped a lot of them in fairness, but I did not advocate for restructuring federalism. I did not advocate for any new policy. I did not advocate mandating legal combat sports in states and in municipalities. I did not say anyone had to do anything different than what they wanted. All I'm saying is the federal government does not make it illegal. Thus, every single day they choose not to make it illegal, they are legalizing it. Every time they put policy forward that does not ban this, they are thus choosing to keep it legal and thus legalizing it. So when I say mutual combat, I mean, of course, I'm not talking about death races. I'm not talking about the purge. I'm talking about good examples like potentially the UFC, or the example I listed, the hypothetical dueling league, where you have bulletproof helmets and medical staff on demand, where this is an antiquated way of dueling, like banning it's an antiquated way to look at the world that doesn't keep up with modern technology. I don't think that argument was even touched, that I'm making a technological argument on the side. The argument here that we make for legalization is I'm not trying to mandate it for anybody. That was the other. And then we had two more red herrings that got brought up. One of them was about the state or the federal government not having the authority. Then I brought up federal murder charges, and we just kind of moved on from there without that red herring ever getting any attention again. The other red herring was that we're granted the right to self-defense from legislation. That's not how that is. It's an exemption from the laws that ban different actions like assault and murder. They're saying we're going to ban these assault and murder things, but there's some caveats. We're not going to ban them in these particular instances. That's making something illegal and leaving caveats. That's not granting you the right of fucking self-defense. That red herring was cleared up as well. At the end of the day, we never got a counter definition for what it means to make something legal that had any bearing in reality. You do not need a new law to make something legal, to legalize it. You need to remove laws to legalize. You need to not pass laws to legalize. That's how it works. That's literally how making fucking laws works. So,
all right. Thank you for that. Now, Doomer, 3 minutes is on the clock for you, sir. Let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, throughout this debate, the affirmative has just tried to stretch the prompt to suit his own kind of needs here and spoken extensively about honor and the right of consenting adults to take risks. Those arguments never answered the central question of the round, though. The resolution is whether mutual combat should be federally legalized. He can try and stretch what that means. That is an action taken by the federal government to approve something. On that question, the affirmative fails to carry its burden. States already regulate assault, battery, homicide, self-defense, public safety. Some states have narrow mutual combat doctrines. Some do not. Some states treat combat by agreement as a reason to deny self-defense. Others provide actual limited consent for defenses for this. That diversity is not a bug in our system. That is the evidence that this is a classic state police powers issue. The affirmative repeatedly argued why they personally believe that mutual combat should be allowed. They never demonstrated why Congress should actually nationalize that policy and override state judgments. They just try and say that it should be the status quo. But really, other areas have illegalized this. So I don't think they can actually square that. Second, they never solved the practical problems of the proposal. Their entire case rests on consent, but consent to violence is pretty difficult. Can it be revoked? How do you prove it? What happens when one participant is unconscious? What happens when someone claims that there was an agreement after the serious injury occurred? What about coercion, intoxication, social pressure, bargaining power, the things that the audience question was kind of trying to bring up there? Combat sports answers these questions with referees, rules, medical oversight, and other safeguards. The affirmative offered the legal protection of consent without showing how those safeguards would be even replaced. Third, most importantly, they never demonstrate a meaningful societal benefit. Combat sports already exist. Boxing exists, MMA is there, wrestling, martial arts. The US already allows extensive forms of consensual combat, kind of like he said. So what additional benefit comes from expanding lawful interpersonal violence beyond those? Would crime decrease? Would violence decrease? Would social conflict decrease? Logically, it follows that if we legalize public acts of violence, the amount of acts of violence in public will increase. The affirmative offered theories, but no clear demonstration that federal legalization produces better outcomes than the system we already have.
All right. And that sounded like a landing. All right, very cool. So, gentlemen, we are going to, actually, I guess we'll go back to this. We are going to go ahead and drop the link here into the chat. I just gave it to all of the people YouTubing. I will drop it into the YouTube chat for myself as well, and my kick. Please, everybody, you know the deal. Click that link. Tell us who you thought made the most persuasive case here, who you thought had the winning arguments, not just who you liked the most, not just who you agreed with. Okay. I am very much looking forward to hearing what the judges have to say about this one. And it's always fun to see the judges get judged. So with that said, Myta, are you, sir, ready to tell them what you think?
I am.
I would love to hear it, please.
So I'm going to start off with the affirmative, as I always do.
Yep.
Appeal to sports through conflict and conflict sports was a strong opening from Tyler. However, I feel like he kind of did a step back on that when he talked about feminism and the pussification of the United States, which I feel like was putting the cart before the horse, trying to predict the opposition's argument, which is something that I took points away for. I liked the good appeal to the electorate and the general want or need to people. I thought there was good arguments for the expansionist nature of law from the state to the Fed. However, the federal legalization argument being required to overrule state laws, in which case this is something that we just know to be true. There was an appeal to case law that made for prior illegal acts without laws. That was a good line of argumentation. Stating that laws are preventative, not to expand accessibility to a thing or action, I felt like was a strong line of argumentation, which the opposition didn't argue against, despite the fact that there's some very large nuance to be had there. I did deduct points for not arguing the prompts because he was appealing to new legislation without making a citation as to where that legislation would undo the law that is already established by state laws to make this legal or illegal. He did address a straw man in either side of the argumentation, which I felt like was just them talking past each other. He at one point did say that he wasn't arguing for a federal framework, but I feel like that's intrinsic to the prompt, so that kind of was a little bit shaky for me. He then argued application of law depending on severity by making an argument of state versus Fed in regard to things like murder, which I thought was a very good line of argumentation. He made appeals to retroactive establishment law, which was another very good line of argumentation, which made previous things that were not illegal fundamentally illegal afterwards. And he made a good appeal to violation of States' Rights Act through the retroactive laws subsequent to that, which was another great line of argumentation. However, I feel like at the end, he did avoid acknowledging the argument of established law and how it applies to the system. Then for the negative, I feel like pointing out that some states already have legalized mutual combat, that there's no need for a federal line of legalization was a strong line of argumentation. And then expanding upon that by saying the regulatory bodies that determine how laws are controlled are not federally overseen in regards to things like drugs and firearm laws, which I believe both were brought up during the debate. You made strong appeals to case law and state authority, not federal legislative bodies, which was another strong line of argumentation, as well as appeals to public violence statistics while making concessions on some of the lines of argumentation that he was making against you, which was a strong rhetorical tactic that I believe like gave him a false sense of hope. You brought up Tyler's argument of no law prohibiting it, which is exactly what Tyler is asking for in the prompt. So I feel like that was another strong line of argumentation. I felt like you controlled the conversation a little bit better than Tyler did without having unnecessary interjections, and you followed that up with a good line of argumentation with codification. However, after that, you did fail to acknowledge mutual combat for sports and combat sports by making the meta argument, which Tyler did call out, and as a result, I deducted a point from you there. You made a strong argumentation for how assault claims are prosecuted in states versus on a federal level. But you followed that up with appealing to the opposition's interpretation of the prompt, which is what a debate is. And I feel like it's a little bit reductive to do so. But at the end, you came out strong in the end by establishing hierarchy in law and how it would violate certain state laws by introducing federal law and appealing to the supremacy clause. So my final judgment was 6-4 in favor of Doomer.
You want me to go? You doing something? Hello? Okay, I'm just gonna go then. For Tyler,
Sorry.
at the very beginning, I'm muting you. Yeah. So at the very beginning, I had to take off a point for using ad homs in your opening statement. That especially because I took 1 point from Doomer for interrupting a lot. I think if you had been softer, then that energy would have been a lot more justified when it got into the debate. I was talking about building up that goodwill, and you did not do that, and so I got to knock a point off there. Other than that, I feel like you're right when you're saying that he didn't understand the argument, and a lot of the chat was talking about how you didn't address the prompt, and I disagree with that. I think if it was something even a little bit different, like the federal government should make this or I don't know exactly, but the language specifically does not entail that it has to be an action. And when Tyler, you established, I'm just looking for the status quo, then I don't feel like Doomer that you effectively showed that that doesn't fit within the argument. You got to pin him down. Otherwise, I just got to judge on what's been put forth. Again, Myta, a lot of good commentary there, kind of stealing the wind from me, but I do I have to use all 10 points?
You have to use 10 points, yes, but you can use them how you want.
Okay. So then I'll go 6-4 for the affirmative.
Okay, 6-4 to Tyler. So once again, the judges are split. Chatters, it's on y'all. I need you guys to tell us who you thought made the best case, who was the most persuasive, not just who you agreed with, not just who you liked, because we like them both, even Tyler. So please click that link. Make sure give us the votes. Let us know where you landed. Yeah, there was a whole lot of talking over each other there, gents. I'm not gonna sway the audience here, but I was surprised by that. I actually thought that there would be a little bit more cordiality, but I mean, how it goes is how it goes. I'm looking forward to this one when we get to it in the after party, because I kind of on board with what Lutch was saying there. Well, actually, I think it was Lutch. Maybe it was Myta. I don't know, about engaging with the prompt as it's written, because the prompt is not mutual combat should remain federally legal. It should be federally legalized, and I feel like there's a disconnect there, but we're going to see what the chat took from that. So 3, 2, 1. I hope you guys have clicked it. Let's go. Yep, you did. Mutual combat should be federally legalized. Results are overwhelmingly in favor of the negative. We are 8-2. That is 15 votes to 4 votes. So that is 2-8 in favor of Doomer. Thank you again to all of tonight's debaters, and above all, thank you to all of the viewers. We wouldn't be here without you. DMZ happens live on Twitch, YouTube, and Kick every Friday and Saturday night, so make sure and follow, like, and subscribe so you will get notifications when we go live. And if you haven't already, join the free Discord server where we take the conversations after the lights go off and the cameras go away. That is where you can tell me if you are interested in participating in the debates. I am the Horseradish, and we hope to see you guys for the next round, here